Germany of Iron and Blood. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 126, My Legion. Hello, Your Royal Highness. On the second day, after receiving the new appointment, Admiral Paul von Hindenburg and Brigadier General Erich von Ludendorff came to report to Qin Tian. It can be seen from the colors of the two that they are in a good mood. Although the 8th Army ranks low among the many legions of the German army, and the tasks it undertakes in future wars are quite arduous, it is undoubtedly very happy to be promoted. Especially Paul von Hindenburg, after offending William II, he once thought that his promotion was hopeless. But now, he is not only the deputy commander of the 8th Army, but also the deputy of the Crown Prince. As long as he can establish a good relationship with the Crown Prince, the future will be very bright. Erich Ludendorff is the same. Now he is only in his early 30s. It is undoubtedly very rare to be promoted to Brigadier General in an exceptional way in the German army. This also means that his future prospects will be limitless. Two generals, please sit down. Qin Tian did not put on any airs of the Crown Prince in front of these two famous generals. This is an important assistant he can rely on in the 8th Army in future wars. If Qin Tian wants to further control the military power and consolidate his position, he must cultivate his own party members in the army. In Qin Tian's mind, the names Manstein, Rommel, Guderian flashed one by one. Hindenburg and Ludendorff would be the first step in his direct control of military power. His Royal Highness is as expected in the legend, very approachable. Facing the amiable Qin Tian, both Hindenburg and Ludendorff couldn't help but have such thoughts in their minds. After the attendants brought coffee, Qin Tian's conversation with them got to the point. General Hindenburg, General Ludendorff, the appointment of you as the deputy commander and acting chief of staff of the 8th Army is what I won from my father. Although I was appointed as the commander of the 8th Army, you should all know, I'm not from the army. Maybe I can make some suggestions on army building and even tactics. But overall, I'm still far from being able to compare with you professionals. So, I hope you will be able to in the days to come, assist me well, strive to build the 8th Army even stronger, and achieve greater victories in future wars. Qin Tian looked at Hindenburg and Ludendorff sincerely. Both Hindenburg and Ludendorff were moved by Qin Tian's frankness. Qin Tian is only 20 years old now, but he holds a high position and is full of talents, but he is not at all complacent. There are very few people who can do this. What's more, Hindenburg and Ludendorff were originally aristocratic soldiers of the traditional German Empire. Loyalty to the Emperor and patriotism were also their creeds. Your Highness, please rest assured, we will definitely assist Your Highness in the future, Admiral Hindenburg said. Brigadier General Ludendorff also nodded heavily. Very good, I feel more at ease. You two should know the Schlieffen plan. Therefore, once the war breaks out, the task of our 8th Army will be very difficult. We will have to use 10 divisions to counter the Russians, the attack of millions of troops. Therefore, in order to be able to win in future wars, in the next few years, we must do everything possible to arm the 8th Army and arm the entire army to the teeth. I will find a way. The 8th Army provides the world's most advanced weaponry and the most powerful firepower, Qin Tian assured. His Royal Highness, will the weapons developed by the German Armament Company be equipped with the 8th Army? Hindenburg asked. The German Arms Company has developed a series of advanced weapons, but due to the obstruction of Moltke, it has not been able to equip troops on a large scale. As a senior general of the German army, Hindenburg knows this clearly. Qin Tian nodded. After we completely control the 8th Army, a large number of advanced weapons will arrive at the 8th Army. As a legion he has built with all his strength, Qin Tian must ensure that this legion is under his control. Both Hindenburg and Ludendorff nodded repeatedly, expressing their understanding. His Royal Highness, but relying solely on the military expenses of the 8th Army, I'm afraid it will be difficult to support His Highness's plan. Admiral Hindenburg frowned. After all, there is only so much military expenditure, and it is simply not enough for a large-scale facelift. You don't have to worry about military expenses, I will find a way. Qin Tian said in a comprehensive manner. He has already made up his mind. If the military expenditure is not enough, he will pay for it himself. Anyway, we must arm the 8th Army to the teeth and gain an overwhelming advantage in future wars. Hindenburg and Ludendorff immediately stopped worrying about this issue. They also knew that Qin Tian was a wealthy businessman and his annual income was very considerable. The 8th Legion is armed to the teeth. What do you think of the 8th Army? Qin Tian asked. Although Qin Tian also collected some information about the 8th Army, but the data on paper is definitely not as comprehensive as professionals like Hindenburg and Ludendorff. Your Highness, the 8th Army has a total of 10 infantry divisions, which are divided into 3 armies and 1 infantry division. In addition, there is a reserve army. If it is full, the entire army has an army of more than 160,000 people. Once a war breaks out, after mobilized, the total strength will exceed 200,000. However, in terms of combat effectiveness, there is a certain gap compared with the first-line legions. Hindenburg introduced to Qin Tian. Through Hindenburg's introduction, Qin Tian had a general understanding of the 8th Army. That is his army. He will command this army in the future war, defeat the powerful enemy, and strive to shine in the war. Both of you should deal with your personal affairs first these few days. In 3 days, we will leave for Königsberg. Qin Tian said. Yes, Your Highness. Both Hindenburg and Ludendorff nodded immediately. They also know that serving as the deputy commander and acting chief of staff of the 8th Army this time will be an important opportunity for them, and it can be called a new starting point in their military career. In the next few days, Qin Tian prepared to go to the 8th Army. At the same time, he also asked the German Arms Company to expand production. Once he takes control of the 8th Legion, Qin Tian will start a large-scale change of clothing throughout the entire legion and arm this legion to the teeth. Chapter 127, Dismount. Königsberg, the capital of East Prussia, is also an important support point for Germany to defend Russia on the Eastern Front. Near Königsberg, the German army built a large number of fortifications such as important fortifications against Russian attacks in the Schlieffen Plan. Due to Russia's traffic factors and mobilization speed, the main force of the German army will be placed on the Western Front, trying to completely defeat France before Russia completes its mobilization. Therefore, only 10 infantry divisions are reserved on the Eastern Front to guard against Russia. Compared with Russia, which has a standing army of more than 1 million, 10 infantry divisions are undoubtedly too few. After all, once war begins, Russia's millions of standing troops will dispatch hundreds of thousands or more troops to attack East Prussia. Therefore, the German Army General Staff believes that they can only rely on defense to delay the German army and buy enough time. Qin Tian took a special train from Berlin to Königsberg. He went to Königsberg with him, including General Paul von Hindenburg, the deputy commander of the 8th Army, and Brigadier General Erich von Ludendorff, the acting chief of staff. The commanders and division commanders of the 8th Army, except for a few people, gathered at the train station, waiting for Qin Tian and his party. Qin Tian is not only the commander of the 8th Army, but also the crown prince of the empire. What a noble status. The 3 armies under the 8th Army are the 11th Army, the 17th Army, and the 20th Army. There is also a reserve army, the 1st Reserve Army. If you count the garrison troops and cavalry troops in various places, the total strength of the 8th Army can exceed 200,000, sufficient after mobilization. On the platform of the railway station, a group of generals of the German army were waiting for Qin Tian's special train, chatting at the same time. Your Majesty took the lead, informing our 8th Army this time. However, it was unexpected for the Crown Prince to come down as the commander of the 8th Army. A middle-aged general sighed. He is Lieutenant General Mackensen, commander of the 20th Army of the 8th Army of the German Army. Although His Royal Highness is not from the army, his talent is certain. What's more, General Hindenburg and General Ludendorff from the General Staff have cooperated. I believe that the 8th Army under their leadership will definitely be stronger, another middle-aged general said. He was Lieutenant General Francois, commander of the 11th Army. Among the regular establishments of the German army, there is no such establishment as a corps, that is, an army group. It is often only when a war breaks out that armies, divisions, Brigades and other units are mobilized to form legions. So naturally there are no permanent positions such as legion commanders. However, this time the 8th Army was formed ahead of schedule. The purpose is to allow Qin Tian to have more time to familiarize himself with, control and arm the 8th Army, so that the 8th Army can play a greater role in future wars. Well, but I think someone will be very disappointed, General Mackensen said with a smile. General Francois also had a smile on his face. Someone in their mouth, Lieutenant General Plitwitz, commander of the 17th Army, you know, he is a favorite of William II, and among the entire army, stationed in East Prussia, he relies on himself, and William II the relationship between the world is domineering. He even said more than once that, if the 8th Army is formed, he will be the best candidate for the commander of the army. But now, Qin Tian's intervention undoubtedly completely shattered his hope. At the same time, it also made him lose face among the various units under the 8th Army. This annoyed Lieutenant General Plitwitz so much that today was the day Qin Tian arrived in Königsberg, but Lieutenant General Plitwitz said he was sick and couldn't come to greet him. I hope His Highness the Crown Prince is a good talker. Otherwise, Plitwitz will be miserable this time. He will leave a bad impression on His Highness the Crown Prince, and he will never be able to stay in the 8th Army, said General Francois. HMPH. That guy had better be transferred from the 8th Army. If he stays in the 8th Army, it will be of no use at all. It will only make the entire army worse. General Mackensen said. It can be seen that General Mackensen dislikes Lieutenant General Plitwitz very much and wish that he would be transferred. Woohoo. The whistle sounded from a distance, and the generals on the platform stopped talking quickly. Soon, Qin Tian's special train entered the station and stopped in front of everyone. The car door opened, and Qin Tian in military uniform, accompanied by Admiral Hindenburg and Brigadier General Ludendorff, got off the train. His Royal Highness, welcome to Königsberg. Generals Francois and Mackensen hurried up to welcome you. Admiral Hindenburg whispered their identities to Qin Tian in Qin Tian's ear. General Francois, General Mackensen, thank you for coming to pick me up, Qin Tian said with a smile. According to the information he had before, General Francois and General Mackensen are also rare talents in the 8th Army, especially General Francois, who is a genius and adventurous general. General Mackensen is also an outstanding general, but he is a little older. Qin Tian glanced at the German generals on the platform and found that there was no figure of Plitwitz, which made him frown involuntarily. Qin Tian undoubtedly knew the favorite of William II. It's just that almost all the generals of the 8th Army came, but he was missing. This made Qin Tian wonder whether the other party wanted to give him a blow. Why didn't you see General Plitwitz? Qin Tian asked directly. His Royal Highness, General Plitwitz is not feeling well and has already asked for leave to return to Berlin. General Mackensen replied. Ask for leave to go back to Berlin? Why didn't I know? Qin Tian's expression suddenly turned ugly. As the commander of the 8th Army, Lieutenant General Plitwitz asked for leave, but he didn't know it at all. Isn't this obviously not taking him seriously? General Plitwitz should have asked for leave from the general staff. General Francois said. Qin Tian snorted coldly, but didn't say anything. However, Lieutenant General Plitwitz had already been sentenced to death in his heart. Qin Tian knew that Lieutenant General Plitwitz had a good relationship with Little Marquis, who made them both the favorites of William II. However, if the other party dared not give him face, then don't blame him for using the other party for surgery. He has just succeeded as the commander of the 8th Army, which is the time when he needs to stand up. Since Plitwitz delivered it to his door, Qin Tian would certainly not be polite. Admiral Hindenburg and Brigadier General Ludendorff don't look too good at the moment. Chapter 128, Courage. Suppressing the anger in his heart, Qin Tian shook hands with a group of generals of the 8th Army with a smile on his face. These generals are all the chief officers of the troops of the 8th Army. If so, you must get their support. Of course, there are undoubtedly very few people who are as ignorant as Lieutenant General Plitwitz. Qin Tian is not only the new commander of the 8th Army, but also the Crown Prince of the Empire. Under such dual identities, there are undoubtedly very few people who dare to provoke him. Unless the brain is flooded, otherwise, who would seek their own death. After meeting with the generals, the group went to the headquarters of the 8th Army. General Francois and the others had already prepared dinner, and they were just waiting for Qin Tian and the others to arrive at Königsberg. Although, one important commander is missing. However, everyone enjoyed themselves at dinner. Qin Tian's approachability made those generals put down all doubts in their hearts. What's more, Qin Tian also announced to everyone that he will provide more resources to the 8th Army in order to make the 8th Army even stronger. The generals of the 8th Army were very satisfied with Qin Tian's guarantee. Everyone, the current international situation is becoming more and more tense. I can assure you that war will definitely break out. And the time will not exceed 5 years. Therefore, during this period of time, we must be ready to fight. Our enemy will be the Russians, and the Russians have almost no advantage except for a little more troops. It can be said that fighting the Russians will mean great military exploits. I hope that when the future war breaks out, we can beat the asterisk out of the Russians. As long as you have military exploits, don't you get all kinds of medals? Getting promoted is undoubtedly a matter of course. Qin Tian said to the crowd. As the saying goes, a soldier who doesn't want to be a general is not a good soldier. These generals naturally have higher pursuits. They want to go to the next level, get a higher rank, and even become a marshal of the end. All of this needs to rely on military exploits. Although, they know that only the 8th Army against Russia is under great pressure. But it's also a huge opportunity. The Russian army is poorly equipped and has poor combat effectiveness. Once the war starts, these German generals are confident that they will win more with less. If you can hit the Russian army hard and defeat the Russian army in one fell swoop during the war, it will be a great contribution. As Qin Tian said, it will be very easy for them to get promoted and get various medals. After all, for a soldier, as long as he has military achievements, it is undoubtedly easy to climb up. Of course, it is undoubtedly very difficult to defeat millions of Russian troops with hundreds of thousands of people. But it is not impossible if Austria-Hungary can share a little for them. The eyes of the generals looking at Qin Tian became hot. They now feel that there seems to be nothing wrong with Qin Tian being the commander of the 8th Army. Following Qin Tian's words, there may be more opportunities in the future. After dinner, General Paul von Hindenburg and General Erich von Ludendorff stayed, and the rest returned to their troops. Your Highness, General Protwitz's behavior this time is a complete provocation to His Highness, and it is a great blow to His Highness's prestige. If His Highness cannot handle this matter properly, I'm afraid that His Highness will be killed in the army. Prestige will be greatly reduced, Hindenburg said with some concern. If possible, it is best to transfer Protwitz away from the 8th Army, Ludendorff also suggested. Qin Tian nodded. Of course I want to drive that guy out of the 8th Army. However, it is very difficult. After all, he is His Majesty's favorite. At the same time, he has a very good personal relationship with Xiaomoqi. Qin Tian was also very disliked by Protwitz. Although, he was a favorite of William II. But he made his way to the top by winning the Kaiser's goodwill at the dinner table with hilarious asterisk stories. How much military talent can such a person be expected to have? In the army, it is simply a black sheep. Qin Tian hoped to build the 8th Army into the most powerful army in the German army, and hoped that in future wars, one could beat 10 and hit the Russians hard in one fell swoop. If Protwitz is not transferred from the 8th Army, it will inevitably have a very adverse impact on his plan. Qin Tian didn't want everything he worked so hard to ruin just like that. However, Qin Tian also knows that it is very difficult to transfer from Plotwitz. Not to mention whether William II will agree, but Little Moltke will definitely strongly oppose it. Little Malky expressed clear opposition to the Marine Corps and Qin Tian's appointment as the commander of the 8th Army. Now the relationship between Qin Tian and Xiaomoqi has deteriorated extremely. Although it has not reached the point of incompatibility, it is not far behind. Your Highness, this incident may be caused by Little Maoki. No matter how difficult it is, we have to find a way to transfer Plotwitz away. Otherwise, with the relationship between Your Highness and Little Maoki, Xiaomoqi will definitely continue to trip His Highness in the future. In this case, it will divert our great energy, and it will not be conducive to His Highness's next control of the 8th Army. Hindenburg reminded, Your Highness, you need an opportunity to establish your prestige in the military. This time Prittwitz undoubtedly gave His Highness an excellent opportunity. Your Highness should not give up this good opportunity. Ludendorff also strongly suggested road. Qin Tian hesitated for a moment, then made up his mind. Even though this would further deteriorate the relationship between him and little Marquis, he couldn't care less about it. There are only a few years before the war breaks out, and there is no more time to waste. Okay, I'll send a telegram to Berlin immediately. This time, Prittwitz must be transferred from the 8th Army. Regarding the successor of the 17th Army commander, please think about it and report to me tomorrow. Qin Tian said. Yes, Your Highness. Both Hindenburg and Ludendorff smiled. Qin Tian was able to show his courage on this issue, which made them very satisfied. Although Qin Tian has been kind to them in promoting them, they should try their best to help them. But they also hope that the monarch they assist is a courageous and talented person, not an indecisive person. There is no doubt that Qin Tian's current performance makes them very satisfied. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129. Kill chickens to warn monkeys. Carter, send this telegram to Berlin immediately and ask your father to hand it over to the emperor. Qin Tian said to his chief guard, Carter von Jonnereit. After becoming the crown prince, Qin Tian formed his own guard, and the head of the guard was Carter von Jonnereit, the head of the guard of the former Crown Prince William. After becoming a vegetative state, Crown Prince William can be said to have been abolished. As the head of the bodyguard, Carter von Jonnereit also had his future ruined. However, his father, Essen von Jonnereit, as the steward of William II, was also very kind to Qin Tian. Together with his younger brother Karl von Jonnereit, he even helped Qin Tian manage the huge business empire. Under the circumstances of these factors, Qin Tian naturally had to look at Carter von Jonnereit differently. As for the issue of loyalty, Qin Tian is not worried at all. The Jonnereit family originally served the Hohenzollern family. Now, he is the crown prince of the empire, the future emperor of the empire, and the Jonnereit family will naturally be loyal to him wholeheartedly. Especially when his future was almost ruined, Carter von Jonnereit undoubtedly cherished this opportunity even more. If Qin Tian also had an accident, or missed the throne, then Carter von Jonnereit would not have achieved much in his life. Yes, Your Highness. Carter immediately sent a telegram. Prittwitz, I'm really sorry this time. Who let you bump into my gun? I have to borrow your head to use it. Qin Tian said secretly. If you want to establish your prestige, there is nothing more suitable than killing chickens and monkeys. Now, Prittwitz himself jumped out to be the chicken. Of course Qin Tian would not let it go. Although, this time Qin Tian couldn't get Prittwitz's head, but transferring the emperor's favorite from the 8th Army was undoubtedly a severe slap in the face, which was also a great blow to other generals' big shock. In this case, it will be much easier for Qin Tian to establish his prestige among the 8th Army. Of course, Qin Tian was not at all sure whether William II would support him. Qin Tian could only hope that William II would remember the love between father and son and help him a little more. Otherwise, it would be impossible to transfer away from Prittwitz under the objection of little Marquis. Qin Tian also had someone notify von Falkenhayn, asking him to support him on this issue. Berlin, the office of Kaiser Wilhelm II. Although, it's already late at night. However, William II did not rest, but continued to deal with official duties. It is not so easy to manage such a huge empire. Even though William II boasted that he had extraordinary talents, he still needed to spend a lot of time on official duties. Your Majesty, your coffee is ready. Essen von Jonnereit walked in with a cup of coffee, put it on the table. William II didn't even raise his head. However, he soon noticed that after Essen von Jonnereit put down the coffee, he didn't leave. Is there anything else? William II raised his head and asked. For this playmate who grew up with him since he was a child, William II has no heirs of the emperor at all. Your Majesty, Crown Prince Oscar seems to be in trouble. Here is a telegram from him. Essen von Jonnereit handed the telegram to William II. William II received the telegram, and soon his face became very ugly. Damn it, that Plutvision guy, who gave him the guts to provoke the imperial prince. William II was furious. Even though Pritwitz is his favorite, he is still very dissatisfied now. However, Oscar seems to have gone too far. Pritwitz just missed the ceremony and dinner to welcome him, so should he be transferred? William II obviously thought that Qin Tian had gone too far. Your Majesty, His Majesty the Crown Prince is still young, and he is only 20 years old this year. Young people, it is inevitable that you will be a little more arrogant. However, this time, Pritwitz did something that should not be done, and His Majesty should not rely on His Majesty to treat him. Even His Royal Highness the Crown Prince doesn't pay attention to his trust. Essen von Jonnerlet said. The Jonnerlet family has a close relationship with Qin Tian, so of course he wants to stand by Qin Tian's side and speak for Qin Tian. King William II frowned, as if he was thinking about how to deal with it. You mean, should I agree to Oscar's request, Your Majesty? The first time His Royal Highness took over the military power of a legion is the time when you need your support. Pritwitz's behavior is undoubtedly a blow to His Highness's prestige. His Royal Highness transferred Pritwitz from the 8th. The Legion has no choice but to maintain his prestige in this way. Otherwise, it will be difficult for His Highness to gain respect in the 8th Legion. Essen von Jonnerlet suggested. If Pritwitz is transferred from the 8th Army, he will also lose face. William II said. After all, Pritwitz was also one of William II's favorite courtiers. Essen von Jonnerlet fell silent. The words have already reached this point. If you said more, I'm afraid that not only will he not be able to help Qin Tian, but it will have the opposite effect. King Wilhelm II thought about it and then asked, is Pritwitz really sick this time when he returns to Berlin? Your Majesty, as far as I know, General Pritwitz was not sick at all. After returning to Berlin, he went directly to the home of the Chief of Staff. It is said that the two drank until late. Essen von Jonnerlet said. Suddenly, William II's face became even uglier. If Pritwitz was really ill and returned to Berlin for medical treatment, then it is undoubtedly understandable that he was absent from Qin Tian's welcome ceremony. However, that now appears to be clearly not the case. Moreover, he also went to Little Maoki's house to drink. It was hard not to make William II wonder whether all this was discussed between Little Maoki and Pritwitz. Although William II favored Little Maoki and Pritwitz, it did not mean that he could condone their misconduct, especially when he bullied his son, the Crown Prince of the Empire, which made him even more unacceptable. Even if he is the most trusted subject, but a subject is always a subject, how could he turn around and bully his master? Let Little Maoki come to see me immediately. In addition, let the Minister of War come too. William II ordered. Now, William II has made up his mind and wants to help Qin Tian again. Since Qin Tian wanted to use Pritwitz to establish his own prestige, then as a father, he naturally couldn't hold back by saying anything. Chapter 130, Military Reform. Your Majesty, what's the matter for summoning the minister at such a late hour? Little Maoki stood in front of William II sleepily. From his body, William II could clearly smell a smell of alcohol. This made William II very dissatisfied, and it was confirmed that what Essen von Jonnerlet said before was true. Von Falkenhayn was expressionless. However, he had already received the telegram from Qin Tian, and he also knew that Qin Tian planned to use Pritwitz for surgery. In this regard, von Falkenhayn agreed with 10,000 people. Pritwitz was a favorite of William II, but he was also a partisan of Little Maoki. If Pritwitz can be kicked out of the 8th Army, it will also be a major blow to Maoki. Although, von Falkenhayn didn't know whether Wilhelm II would agree to Qin Tian's request. But judging from the current situation, it is quite optimistic. He also made up his mind that once William II wanted to consult his opinion, he would fully support Qin Tian. Your Excellency Chief of Staff, Your Excellency Minister of War. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince sent a telegram, hoping to transfer General Pritwitz from the 8th Army and make another arrangement. What do you think? William II asked. What? Little Maoki was shocked immediately, and the sleepiness on his face disappeared all of a sudden. At the same time, the drunkenness is completely gone. Before, he applauded Pritwitz for embarrassing Qin Tian, but he never thought that Qin Tian would directly make such a request. At the same time, he also sensed Qin Tian's sinister intentions. Once Pritwitz is really kicked out of the 8th Army, he will probably be thrown directly into a idle position. In a short time, there is no possibility of gaining real power. This is also an unacceptable result for himself. Your Majesty, how can His Highness the Crown Prince kick out such a condition? General Pritwitz is a talented general. It is unfair to him to transfer him from the 8th Army. Little Malky was extremely angry. King Wilhelm II didn't change his mind because of Moltke's anger. He looked at von Falkenhayn. His Excellency, Minister of War, what do you think? Wilhelm II looked at von Falkenhayn. Your Majesty, what is the reason for His Royal Highness requesting the transfer of General Pritwitz? Von Falkenhayn asked. Oscar believes that General Pritwitz's ability is not enough to serve as the commander of the 17th Army. The future task of the 8th Army is to resist the Russian attack, which requires that every general of the 8th Army must be superior, only with his military talents. Oscar thinks that General Pritwitz is not up to the task. William II said. Slander. This is definitely a slander against General Pritwitz. General Pritwitz is an outstanding general of the Empire. How could he be incapable of being an army commander? Little Malky immediately jumped up. I don't think this is a slander. General Pritwitz's ability is indeed a problem. It is indeed inappropriate for him to serve as the commander of the 17th Army. Von Falkenhayn immediately expressed his opinion. Your Excellency Falkenhayn, you are talking nonsense with your eyes open. How could there be any problem with General Pritwitz's ability? He just didn't attend the welcome ceremony of His Royal Highness. Is His Royal Highness going to deal with him like this? If that's the case, it's too unconvincing. Xiaomaoki immediately tore off the last fig leaf with a look of anger. William II's complexion suddenly became a little ugly. Xiaomaoki's recent behavior has made him gradually lose his patience. Okay, everyone doesn't need to quarrel anymore. For the stability of the 8th Army, let's temporarily transfer General Pritwitz away. William II made a decision. Little Malky was very unwilling, but seeing the expressionless William II, he knew that, even if he resolutely opposed it, it would be useless. In that case, it would make William II hate him even more. Under the circumstances, that both William II and von Falkenhayn tended to support Qin Tian, even if Xiaomaoki resolutely opposed it, it would not help. He could only watch Pritwitz being transferred from the 8th Army. The only thing that can be done is probably to find a way to find a good position for Pritwitz again. Originally, Xiaomaoki planned to make Pritwitz an heir in the 8th Army so as to find trouble for Qin Tian. However, it seems that Qin Tian is not easy to deal with now. Actually, he acted first and pulled out the mail of Pritwitz. Just wait and see. Oscar, I won't let you be so mean. After leaving the palace, watching von Falkenhayn drive away with a gloomy expression, Xiaomaoki spit out with an ugly face these words. The next day, Qin Tian received a telegram from Berlin. Both Essen von Jonnerit and von Falkenhayn had sent him telegrams informing him that Wilhelm II had decided to transfer Pritwitz away. A formal transfer order will be issued soon. This made Qin Tian heave a sigh of relief. It seems that William II is still on my side. However, such a thing cannot be separated. If such a request is made to William II again, he will definitely not agree to it, and he may even turn back. Come here and reprimand me. Qin Tian thought secretly. At 9 o'clock in the morning, Hindenburg and Ludendorff came. They were also very happy when they learned that William II had agreed to be transferred from Pritwitz. As for the candidate for the successor commander of the 17th Army, they proposed Leopold von Seckert. Qin Tian thought for a while and agreed. He clearly remembered that in another time and space, Seckert was known as the father of the German army in World War II, which shows his ability. Under Qin Tian's deliberate publicity, the news of Lieutenant General Pritwitz's transfer quickly spread throughout the 8th Army, which shocked the other generals. Even Pritwitz was transferred away for offending Qin Tian, let alone them. This made Qin Tian's prestige in the 8th Army rise unprecedentedly. It was also under such circumstances that Qin Tian started his long-planned plan, which was to reform the current military system of the German army. The current German army consists of squads, platoons, companies, battalions, regiments, divisions, corps, and regiments, group armies, from bottom to top. Qin Tian intends to remove the brigade as a unit and let the division directly manage the regiment. If the conditions are ripe, he also wants to remove the army unit and let the legion directly command each division, so that the command system will be flattened, thereby improving the efficiency of command. Of course, Qin Tian knew that this would cause an uproar, so he first consulted Hindenburg and Ludendorff. Chapter 131, Armed to the Teeth. General Hindenburg, General Ludendorff, this is my suggestion for the reform of the military system. You two have a look. If we can make our command system more flat, it will improve command efficiency. It will bring great benefits, Qin Tian said, and then handed a document to Hindenburg and Ludendorff. Hindenburg and Ludendorff took the file and read it. Soon, shock was evident on their faces. Indeed, they never expected that Qin Tian would propose reforming the military system. Although, over the decades, from the Kingdom of Prussia to the German Empire, the army's military system has changed from time to time. But basically they are only minor modifications, unlike Qin Tian, who directly cut off a certain level of units. If they knew that Qin Tian not only wanted to get rid of the unit brigade, but also wanted to get rid of the unit army, they would probably be even more shocked. General Hindenburg and Brigadier General Ludendorff, after reading Qin Tian's plan, remained silent for a long time. After a while, Hindenburg spoke. Your Highness, removing the unit brigade can indeed simplify the command system. However, this may cause turmoil. It will also make many people not used to it. Most importantly, it will reduce the number of brigadier level generals. I'm afraid this will make many people dissatisfied. Hindenburg was a little worried. After all, one radish and one hole. If brigade level units exist, there will be many more brigade commanders, deputy brigade commanders, brigade chiefs of staff, etc. positions. These are the ranks of brigadier general and colonel. Where will these people go after the brigade unit is cut off? General Hindenburg, we are only implementing this military system within the 8th Army and will not extend it to other armies. Even if it causes turmoil, we can completely suppress it. As for those brigade level generals we can transfer to other departments. It does not mean that these brigadier generals and colonels will no longer be needed after the brigade units are eliminated. The commander of the artillery regiment can be a brigadier general. The deputy division commander and division chief of staff can also be a brigadier general. If you think about it, there should be no big problem, Qin Tian said. On this issue, he has made up his mind. No matter how difficult it is, he will not back down. Although it is a bit troublesome, the simplified command system is indeed of great benefit to the command and operations of the army. I think we can try it, Brigadier General Ludendorff said. Ludendorff was younger and more aggressive than Hindenburg. Hindenburg hesitated for a while and expressed another worry. Your Highness, if we change the military system without authorization, this may cause dissatisfaction with the general staff. Your Majesty does not know what the attitude is. Don't worry too much about the general staff headquarters. If little Moki wants to make trouble, I will deal with it. As for the father, I will explain to him, Qin Tian said. Anyway, he and little Maoki are now at odds with each other. Even if he doesn't do anything, little Maoki will make trouble for him. Instead of this, it is better to follow his ideas. Anyway, now that Qin Tian's crown prince position has become more and more stable, naturally he no longer needs to be afraid of Zio Maoki. As for William II's attitude, Qin Tian is still confident that he can persuade him. After all, almost everything Qin Tian has done in these years has been successful. Under such circumstances, Wilhelm II would have believed him. Okay, Your Highness, then follow your plan. Hindenburg nodded. He had already persuaded him, but Qin Tian was still stubborn, so he had no choice. According to Qin Tian's plan, all units of the 8th Army will be reorganized according to the new military system. A squad of 12 people is equipped with 10 rifles, 1 light machine gun, 1 sniper rifle, and 1 grenadier. 3 squads plus the firearms squad and the platoon department form a platoon. The firearms squad also has 12 people, equipped with a heavy machine gun and a mortar. The platoon consists of the chief and deputy platoon leader, a health worker, a signal soldier and 2 messengers. In this case, a row is 54 people. 3 infantry platoons plus a heavy weapons platoon and company headquarters. The heavy weapons platoon has 2 light machine guns, 3 60mm mortars, and 1 heavy machine gun, with a number of 23 people. The headquarters is composed of the chief and deputy company commanders, 2 guards, 1 correspondent, 1 hygienist, and 2 messengers. The entire infantry company has a total of 193 people. The infantry battalion consists of 3 infantry companies, a battalion headquarters company, a heavy weapons company, and an infantry artillery company. In addition to the officers and soldiers that make up the battalion headquarters, the battalion headquarters also includes a reconnaissance platoon, the Guard Reconnaissance Platoon. The heavy weapons company is equipped with 6 81mm medium mortars, 8 light machine guns, and 3 heavy machine guns. An infantry artillery company equipped with 6 Type 08 infantry artillery, Type 92 infantry artillery for anti-Japanese troops, with a total strength of 1,050 soldiers. Infantry regiment consists of 3 infantry battalions, and 1 artillery battalion, consisting of regiment headquarters and troops directly under the regiment. The regiment headquarters includes the civilian staff of the regiment headquarters, the guard company, the reconnaissance company, etc. Other regiment-affiliated units include regiment-owned mortar companies equipped with 6 107mm heavy mortars. In addition, there are logistics company, health company and so on. The artillery battalion is a field artillery battalion, which is divided into 3 field artillery companies, each equipped with 6 75mm field artillery, and the regiment has a strength of more than 4,500 people. Infantry divisions include 3 infantry regiments, 1 artillery regiment, and other division-directed units. The units directly under the division include the division headquarters, reconnaissance battalion, guard battalion, supply battalion, armored battalion, not listed for now, etc. The artillery regiment has 3 artillery battalions, 2 of which are 105mm howitzer battalions, and each battalion is equipped with 18 105mm howitzers. The other battalion is a 150mm heavy howitzer battalion, equipped with 18 150mm heavy howitzers. The entire infantry division has a total of more than 16,500 soldiers. The biggest difference between the new infantry division and the old infantry division is undoubtedly the enhanced machine gun firepower and artillery firepower. In particular, the artillery firepower has been greatly improved. The existing German infantry division is equipped with 54 77mm field guns and 18 105mm howitzers. The restructured infantry division is equipped with 54 75mm field guns, 36 105mm light howitzers and 18 150mm heavy howitzers. The number of artillery pieces has nearly doubled. The intensity of the firepower is more than twice that of the previous infantry division. It can be said that with the addition of so many technical weapons, as long as the new infantry division has been trained, its combat effectiveness will be stronger, at least much stronger than the previous one. If Hindenburg and Ludendorff didn't quite believe Qin Tian's proposal to build the 8th Army into the most powerful army in the German army before, then they fully believed it now. Chapter 132, Firepower Wins. Hindenburg and Ludendorff were already stunned. They may not have thought at all that the firepower of an infantry division can be so powerful. In their opinion, this kind of firepower is really too powerful. Your Highness, are we really going to do this? If you reorganize according to your plan, then the firepower of each infantry division will be greatly improved. It is estimated that other countries in the world are far from being able to compare with us, said Hindenburg. Point before, an infantry division of the German army had 54 77mm field guns and 18 105mm light howitzers, 114mm howitzer only. An infantry division of the French has only 36 75mm field guns. Although, Mis-75's rate of fire is terrifying, but the disadvantage in caliber is irreparable. As for the Russians, although each infantry division has 48 76.2mm field guns, but neither the rate of fire nor the quantity has any advantage. Now, if reorganized according to Qin Tian's military system, the infantry divisions of the German army will have an overwhelming advantage in firepower. Generally speaking, 155mm heavy howitzers will not appear in the sequence of infantry divisions. Now, Qin Tian asked the German infantry divisions to also be equipped with 18 artillery pieces of this caliber, which undoubtedly made the German infantry divisions have more powerful firepower. The most direct way to further improve the combat effectiveness of our army is to strengthen the firepower of the troops. Artillery firepower is undoubtedly a vital part of the firepower of the troops. Having powerful artillery allows us to have powerful long-range strike capability. In this case, our troops will have a greater advantage in combat. Qin Tian said. But Your Highness, equipping so many cannons may greatly increase the military expenditure, Ludendorff reminded. Compared with the previous infantry divisions, each of the now reorganized infantry divisions has 18 more 105mm light howitzers and 18 155mm heavy howitzers. The 8th Army has a total of 10 infantry divisions, which requires 180 105mm light howitzers and 180 155mm heavy howitzers. This is not a small expense, especially now that the relationship between them and MOK is so tense. It is almost impossible to get the General Staff to agree to increase military spending. Don't worry, this military expenditure is nothing. I paid it myself. I know that little Maoki will definitely not increase our military expenditure, so I don't bother to find him. Such a small amount of money is not worth it to me. What is it? Qin Tian said nonchalantly. Hindenburg and Ludendorff nodded. Indeed, for Qin Tian, who is as rich as a country, the cost of several hundred cannons is nothing at all. Even if the cost of subsequent training is added, it is also nothing. Your Highness, with the addition of so many artillery pieces, the firepower of our infantry division can truly be the best in the world. Hindenburg exclaimed. Of course, this is exactly my goal. Every soldier's life in the German Empire is precious. Soldiers are absolutely not allowed to fight for problems that can be solved with shells. If one shell is not enough, use 10 or even 100 pieces. In comparison, saving one more soldier's life is the most important thing. Qin Tian said. The American emperors of later generations have always claimed to fight a war with 0 casualties. Even the United States has not been able to succeed once. However, this concept is worth learning. Qin Tian also knew that, even if the firepower of the troops was strengthened, there would inevitably be many casualties in the war. But being able to save the life of one more soldier is one, and the little adds up, and in the end it is very impressive. Qin Tian didn't want half of Germany's young and middle-aged to die in a world war. In that case, even if the war is won, so what? With so many people dying, the development of the country will inevitably be greatly affected. So, Qin Tian hoped that in the war, as few deaths as possible. Qin Tian's concept made Hindenburg and Ludendorff agree very much. Although, they are all people who are used to seeing mountains of corpses and seas of blood. However, Qin Tian's ability to consider the lives of ordinary soldiers and not hesitate to invest huge sums of money is undoubtedly worthy of admiration. In addition to the enhanced artillery firepower, the newly reorganized infantry divisions also have greatly enhanced machine gun firepower. Each infantry battalion, one infantry battalion has 15 heavy machine guns, 6 12.7mm heavy machine guns, 9 7.62mm heavy machine guns, and 33 light machine guns. There are also 18 60mm light mortars and 6 81mm medium mortars. The firepower of the frontline troops has also been greatly improved, Ludendorff said. Qin Tian nodded. With the development of technology, the previous combat method of lining up with guns has long been inapplicable. The appearance of machine guns has made that combat method no different from courting death. I think that this war is very likely to turn into a trench warfare. The two sides are digging hundreds of kilometers of trenches on the battlefield. It will be impossible to break through the enemy's trench defense line under the blockade of the enemy's powerful machine gun fire. The casualties paid will inevitably be very heavy. Therefore, we can only further strengthen the firepower of the infantry. At the same time, equip as many mortars as possible to attack the enemies hiding in the trenches. It is very likely that future wars will evolve into trench warfare, which Hindenburg and Ludendorff still agree with. With the continuous advancement of technology, the way of fighting will inevitably change. In addition, there is another extremely significant change, that is, the firepower of each infantry squad has been strengthened. In Qin Tian's plan, not only would each infantry squad be equipped with a light machine gun, a sniper rifle, and a grenadier. The rifle used by the infantry will also change from the Mauser 1898 rifle to the M1 semi-automatic rifle. Although, compared with the Mauser 1898 rifle, the M1 semi-automatic rifle has some disadvantages in terms of long-range accuracy. However, the fire rate is faster and the firepower is more powerful. After changing the equipment, the firepower of each infantry squad will be greatly strengthened. It can be said that in the future, there will be no problem for one infantry squad to resist 2 or 3 enemy squads. With powerful firepower, the goal of winning more with less is truly achieved. Qin Tian believes that in war, the most critical factor is not weapons, but people. However, equipping the elite soldiers with the best weapons will undoubtedly further enhance the combat effectiveness of the troops. Chapter 133, Impeach. You too. If there is no problem, then I will call the commanders of the various armies and divisions for a final discussion. Once it is confirmed, the reorganization will begin immediately. Qin Tian said. Your Highness, I have no objection. Hindenburg immediately stated his position. Your Highness's reform of the military system will play a great role in improving the combat effectiveness of the troops, and I also support it. Ludendorff also said, fine, let's do it. However, Your Highness, the large-scale refitting of the entire 8th Army requires a large amount of weapons and equipment. Can the German Arms Company provide so many weapons and equipment? Ludendorff asked. Reorganize for the time being, and the weapons and equipment will be gradually replenished. I have asked the German Arms Company to start full production. It will take at most 1 year to produce the weapons needed by the 8th Army. After all the weapons and equipment are in place, you can start training new tactics. I hope that in the last few years, the 8th Army can become a truly elite force. With advanced weapons, the combat effectiveness of the troops can be significantly improved. Our opponents, the Russians, have relatively poor combat effectiveness. At that time, I hope that our troops will be able to fight against 10. If we rely on our strength alone, we can defeat the Russians. I think it will definitely be a huge military achievement. Qin Tian said with a smile. If the 8th Army can perform well in the war, he will gain great prestige. In the army, his prestige will be further enhanced. This will be very helpful to consolidate his crown prince status. Hindenburg and Ludendorff are also full of expectations for future wars. If the 8th Army can really hit the Russians hard, they will continue to be promoted, and it will be certain. At that time, Admiral Hindenburg may be able to obtain the Marshal's scepter, and Ludendorff can also be promoted to Lieutenant General, or even General. Although, Ludendorff has just been promoted from Colonel to Brigadier General in an exceptional way. But at the end of the year at most, Qin Tian will come forward and let him be promoted again, from Brigadier General to Major General. The next day, Qin Tian called the commanders and division commanders of the 8th Army to discuss the reform of the military system. The transfer order of the 17th Corps Commander Prittwitz has come down. Prittwitz sent only his adjutant to handle the formalities while he stayed in Berlin. Lieutenant General Zeckert, the trusted commander of the 17th Army, has not yet arrived. Regarding Qin Tian's reform of the military system, some of these army commanders and division commanders supported, some opposed, and some hesitated, taking a neutral attitude. However, after Qin Tian and others did some work and stated that they would properly arrange the generals and officers of each brigade level unit, those division commanders and army commanders all expressed their support for Qin Tian's military system reform. After all, Qin Tian's identity and status are there, and if he wants to push something forcefully, no one can oppose it, unless William II objected. But would Wilhelm II object? From the matter of Qin Tian's transfer from Prittwitz, everyone has already seen William II's attitude clearly. Under such circumstances, naturally no one would fight Qin Tian again. Besides, the reform of the military system and large-scale refitting will undoubtedly further improve the combat effectiveness of the troops. This is a good thing for the troops. Because of this, naturally there will not be too many people who oppose it. one by one. They also hope that the combat effectiveness of the troops can be further improved, and then in future wars, defeat the Russians, gain military merit, and thus be promoted. On January 15, 1909, Qin Tian ordered that all divisions under the 8th Army be reorganized. The 10 infantry divisions of the entire 8th Army began to be reorganized according to the new military system promulgated by Qin Tian. Although, during this process, countless people jumped out to oppose it, but it still couldn't change Qin Tian's determination, let alone stop the reorganization from continuing. Of course, Qin Tian's actions also caused dissatisfaction among many people, especially Moltke, who was incompatible with him, and Lieutenant General Prittwitz, who was kicked out of the 8th Army. Your Excellency, Chief of Staff, that's really great. That brat Oscar dared to reform the military system without authorization. He is looking for a dead end. My people reported to me that he was in the 8th Army, and we should seize this opportunity and kick him out of the 8th Army. Lieutenant General Prittwitz was very excited. Although, after being transferred from the 8th Army, Little Maoki found him a good position in the garrison. However, everyone Prittwitz regarded his expulsion from the 8th Army as a great shame and humiliation, and he wanted to avenge this. Even though Qin Tian is the crown prince of the empire, Prittwitz, who has been blinded by hatred, can't care so much anymore. Are the members of the 8th Legion really dissatisfied with Oscar? Little Maoki was also shocked. In the confrontation with Qin Tian, Zhao Maoki rarely won, which made him very annoyed towards Qin Tian. Yes, Your Excellency Chief of Staff, Prittwitz immediately assured, patted his chest. Haha, good, that's great. This time I want to see how he was kicked out of the 8th Army. Little Maoki's eyes flashed a ruthless look. It would be great if His Majesty could abolish his position as Crown Prince in a fit of anger, Prittwitz said. Qin Tian's position as Crown Prince put him under great pressure. Although he is the favorite of William II, William II is not young. In the future, this empire will belong to Qin Tian. Offended Qin Tian, and Qin Tian will succeed to the throne in the future. Is there any good fruit for him to eat? Little Maoki shook his head. It is undoubtedly very difficult to pull him down from the position of Crown Prince. However, it is not impossible. We need to do it step by step. As long as he continues to make mistakes, there will be a chance. Little Maoki has always been on good terms with Crown Prince William, but unfortunately, Crown Prince William became a vegetable, which gave Qin Tian the opportunity to sneak in. If Crown Prince William hadn't become a vegetable, no matter how powerful Qin Tian was, he wouldn't have had the chance to become Crown Prince. Little Maoki now only hopes that Crown Prince William can wake up as soon as possible. In that case, there might be a chance to remove Qin Tian from power. On January 22nd, Maoki and Prittwitz met with William II and formally impeached Qin Tian for his misconduct in the 8th Army, and demanded that William II remove Qin Tian's 8th Army commander's position. Chapter 134, Clown. Your Majesty, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is still too young after all. Regardless of the actual situation, he implemented military system reform in the 8th Army, which not only forcibly changed the traditional military system of the German Imperial Army, but also made many generals and officers resentful. The entire 8th Army has been greatly affected by this. If this continues, it will be very difficult for the 8th Army's combat effectiveness to remain the same, not to mention improving. At that time, once the war breaks out, the Russians will attack East Prussia. If so, how can the 8th Army be able to resist it? Zhao Maoki accused Qin Tian harshly, as if Qin Tian was not dealt with, the 8th Army would collapse, and Germany would lose the future war. King William II couldn't help frowning. He thought it didn't seem to be as serious as Maoki said. However, little Maoki said so seriously, which made William II's confidence shake. Could it be that Qin Tian is really not suitable to be the commander of the 8th Army? Your Majesty, I believe that His Highness the Crown Prince must be transferred from the 8th Army. Otherwise, the 8th Army will be messed up. Prittwitz also jumped out. King William II knew that Qin Tian transferred Prittwitz from the 8th Army last time, which made Prittwitz hold a grudge. Now, there may indeed be some problems with the military system reform that Qin Tian implemented in the 8th Army, so he couldn't wait to jump out. William II knew about Qin Tian's military system reform in the 8th Army. However, he doesn't think this will have any bad effects. He also hoped that Qin Tian could make some achievements in the 8th Army. In this case, he can take this opportunity to promote it to other legions. Okay, I understand. I will immediately send Oscar back to Berlin and explain this to me. William II said. Yes, Your Majesty. Little Moltke Prittwitz replied. Although William II did not immediately issue an order to remove the commander of Qin Tian's 8th Army, which disappointed them a little. However, being able to get Qin Tian to rush back to Berlin from the 8th Army immediately to question him is already a great victory. When William II's order reached the 8th Army, Qin Tian knew that it was Zhao Maoki who made the move. In this regard, he is not surprised. He had expected a long time ago that little Maoki would definitely make trouble for him. Your Highness, the news I got is that little Maoki and Prittwitz impeached you to His Majesty. Those two guys really shouldn't be. Don't they know that the reform of the military system and the large-scale change of clothes and the new weapons improve the combat effectiveness of the troops? This is only good for the entire German Empire, not bad. Hindenburg was very angry. It's not that they don't know this, it's just that they don't want the military system reform to succeed under the auspices of His Highness the Crown Prince. They know that once His Highness the Crown Prince succeeds, they will completely lose the chance to bring down His Highness the Crown Prince. They also know that once His Royal Highness the Crown Prince inherits the throne, people like them will have no chance of being in a high position. Therefore, they jumped out eagerly. Ludendorff said, HMPH. They won't succeed. I want to see what tricks they can pull off this time. In the face of facts, His Majesty will not listen to their nonsense. Qin Tian said confidently. Yes, Your Highness. Hindenburg and Ludendorff nodded repeatedly. They are also very displeased with people who have little ability such as little Moltke Prittwitz, and who are in high positions by virtue of their close relationship with William II. It would be great if they could be driven out, or even driven out of the army. Qin Tian took a special train overnight and returned to Berlin. The next morning, he had already appeared in William II's office. At the same time, Moltke Jr., Prittwitz, Generals von Falkenhayn and Waldsee were also in the office. Oscar, how is the situation of the 8th Army? William II asked. Father, the situation of the 8th Army is alright. It is constantly developing. I believe that the 8th Army will soon become an elite force. Qin Tian is full of confidence in this. His Royal Highness, isn't it exaggerated? Your Highness is in the 8th Legion, isn't it outrageous? Now he deliberately deceives His Majesty, isn't it good? Zhao Maoki looked sinister. The sky is angry and the people are complaining. What's going on? Qin Tian was taken aback. Although he has touched the interests of some people because of the reform of the military system, it is far from the point of anger, right? This crime is too heavy. Does Your Highness still want to deny it? Your Highness insists on going his own way and implementing military system reform in the 8th Army, which has made the generals and officers very dissatisfied. If this continues, the 8th Army will collapse. What is there to talk about? Elite Legion. Prittwitz jumped out to accuse. The corners of Qin Tian's raised, and he looked at Lieutenant General Prittwitz as if he was looking at a clown. He had known that Prittwitz would hold a mouth grudge against being kicked out of the 8th Army, and he also knew that he still had some henchmen in the 8th Army. This time his military system reform, Prittwitz will definitely jump out. It's just that he didn't expect that the other party didn't even understand the real situation, so he jumped out and made accusations. He really doubted how such a person could be promoted to be a lieutenant general of the empire, or a commander of an infantry army. Qin Tian's eyes made Prittwitz so angry that he almost cursed. However, Qin Tian's status made him dare not treat ordinary people like that. I had no choice but to curse a few words in my heart to relieve my anger. General Prittwitz, it's too early to jump to conclusions. It's not too late to come to a conclusion. After investigating the facts, von Falkenhayn spoke out in support of Qin Tian. HMPH. Isn't everything obvious? What else is there to say? Prittwitz yelled. The whole office became noisy. This made William II very dissatisfied. Okay, shut up. I'm the one asking about Oscar. Without my permission, no one else can speak. William II said angrily. Seeing that William II was angry, Lieutenant General Prittwitz kept silent. Although he has no military ability, however, the ability to observe words and expressions is very strong. Otherwise, he would not have become the favorite of William II, and then promoted to Lieutenant General and Commander of the Infantry Army. He knew that all his powers were given by William II. If Wilhelm II was off, and his powers taken back, he would have nothing. Chapter 135, Pig Teammate. Oscar, tell me about your military reform in the 8th Army. William II said. Yes, father. Qin Tian nodded. The current military system implemented by the 8th Army has only one purpose, which is to flatten the command system so as to improve the efficiency of command as much as possible. We have temporarily removed the brigade level unit, and the division directly governs each regiment, in order to simplify the command system. If the conditions are ripe in the future, we will further simplify it. Qin Tian confessed his thoughts. With the advancement of technology, especially the advancement of communication equipment, the command system has been flattened, which is already achievable. It was Qin Tian's attempt to cut down the brigade level units first. If possible, he plans to cut down the army unit in the future and let the group army headquarters directly command each division. In this way, the command system can be simplified more. After listening to Qin Tian's explanation, everyone nodded involuntarily. Everyone, including William II, believed that Qin Tian's reforms would undoubtedly be very beneficial to improving the combat effectiveness of the army. I didn't expect Oscar to have such excellent talent in the management of the army. If he is proficient in the army and navy at the same time, I have nothing to worry about in terms of army command. William II thought secretly. The Crown Prince of the Empire may not be a military strategist, but he must understand military affairs. The German Empire and even its predecessor, the Kingdom of Prussia, were established by force. This makes the Emperor of the Empire must have military talents. Before, William II was worried that Qin Tian only understood the navy, not the army. Now it seems that he was worrying too much. William II also had to admit that Qin Tian was a more suitable candidate for Crown Prince. Von Falkenhayn and General Waldsee also nodded repeatedly. Of course they can see that Qin Tian's reforms are beneficial to the army. They even want to promote it to other troops if they can. But the faces of Xiaomoki and Plutviks are not so good looking. If it proves that Qin Tian's reforms are beneficial, wouldn't their goals be impossible to achieve? This will also make William II dissatisfied with them. His Royal Highness, this is just your one-sided statement. Your reforms in the 8th Army have already caused dissatisfaction among many generals and officers. If they cannot calm down their anger, this will bring great trouble. Yes, Little Malky said. Oh, are there really many officers and generals who are dissatisfied? Why don't I know this? I'm curious, how do you know this? Qin Tian looked at Little Maoki and Prittwitz with a half smile. Your Royal Highness, there is no need to change the subject. Of course we have our channels. Plutwitz looked confident. Father, how about this? You send people to the 8th Army to investigate on the spot and see if there are any generals and officers who are really dissatisfied. If there are really, and there are many, I'm willing to be punished. Qin Tian said. He knew that the reform of the military system certainly made some people dissatisfied. But they have various methods used to minimize this dissatisfaction. Even if some people are dissatisfied, it is definitely a very small number of people. Most people have already accepted the reform of the military system. Little Malky and Lieutenant General Prittwitz immediately looked happy. They seemed to have seen that Qin Tian was punished by William II and transferred from the 8th Army. Lieutenant General Prittwitz even thought, if Qin Tian was transferred from the 8th Army, wouldn't he be able to return to the 8th Army? Even return to the 8th Army as the commander of the above general. At that time, all the humiliation on him will be washed away. King William II froze for a moment, wanting to say something. But seeing the confidence on Qin Tian's face, he could only nod in agreement. William II believed that Qin Tian would not fight unprepared. With Qin Tian's intelligence, he would definitely not leave any clues waiting for others to catch him. Your Majesty, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince not only reformed the military system in the 8th Army, but also changed the firepower equipment of the troops without authorization. I think that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is deliberately profiting for his own company, which is very inappropriate. Pulitvets jumped out again. Judging by his appearance, he wished he could completely trample Qin Tian to the ground all at once. William II looked at Pritwitz with a hint of disgust, thinking that this guy was too aggressive. Little Maoki saw this scene, and suddenly cried out in his heart. In his opinion, this guy Plitvik is simply a pig teammate. Oscar, tell everyone. William II said. Yes, Royal Father. Qin Tian nodded, not at all worried about Pritwitz's question. The reason why the 8th Army adopted the weapons of the Ducharme's Company on a large scale is because only the Ducharme's Company can provide us with those weapons. Of course, the artillery is purchased from the Krupp Company. Qin Tian explained. Subsequently, he also revealed to everyone the firepower equipment of the 8th Army's troops at all levels. Everyone couldn't help being dumbfounded after learning that every infantry division under the 8th Army was equipped with such powerful firepower. Your Highness, is this really an infantry division? Such firepower is too strong. General Wolsey was speechless. Yes, Your Majesty. An infantry division with so many machine guns, excluding mortars and grenadiers, has 54 75mm field guns, 36 105mm howitzers and 18 150mm heavy howitzers. The firepower is really too powerful. Von Falkenhayn was also speechless. With such a powerful firepower, as long as the people of the 8th Army are not fools, other troops will have no way to compare with them. Little Malky and Plutvis were also very shocked. They were also shocked by the powerful firepower of the 8th Army. His Royal Highness, you need to spend a lot of military expenses to equip the 8th Army with such powerful firepower, right? The military expenses of the current Imperial Army are not rich, and there is no extra military expenses for you at all. Zhao Maoki said. Equipment with such powerful firepower requires a large amount of military expenditure. If there is such military expenditure, it is better to mobilize more troops. It is a big mistake for His Royal Highness to do so. Lieutenant General Pritwitz triumphantly said. I don't need to bother you about the military expenses. The military expenses of the 8th Army only need to be paid normally. I will be responsible for all the extra military expenses. Qin Tian said coldly. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136, Military Order. In the German Empire, Qin Tian has undoubtedly become a legend. From an ordinary prince without a penny, he became the crown prince of the empire in a very short period of time, and I don't know how many people looked at him. What really makes people talk about is undoubtedly Qin Tian's talent in business. From the earliest established Deutsche Welfare Lottery Company to the present huge Deutsche Industrial Group, Qin Tian's personal assets have exceeded 500 million marks. Such assets may not be considered the richest man in Germany. However, Deutsche Industries Group's ability to make money makes everyone jealous. From the German welfare lottery, which seems to be stealing money, to the Daimler Motor Company, which is popular all over the world, the annual profit is undoubtedly an astronomical figure. In the capitalist world, the importance of money is self-evident. Even the emperor of the empire has to worship under the beauty of money. Qin Tian, the crown prince, has a large amount of funds, which naturally gives him an advantage in many issues. For example, now, Zhao Maoki wants to use military expenses to pinch Qin Tian's neck. Qin Tian said that the extra military expenses can be borne by himself, and he can push him back with one sentence. Anyway, for Qin Tian, paying the extra military expenses of the 8th Army was nothing more than a trifle. Little Malky and Plitwitz, their eyes widened, and their mouths were open, but they couldn't say anything. Damn it. Damn Oscar, don't think he can do whatever he wants with a few filthy money. Little Moki was furious. His Royal Highness, you are rich, that's right. However, if you invest in military expenses privately, I'm afraid it won't be very good. Zhao Maoki said. That's right. How can private money be confused with military spending? Pritwitz also yelled. Your Highness actively supports the development of the army. What's wrong with that? Von Falkenhayn immediately expressed his opinion. Okay, since Oscar is capable of supporting army building, let him do it. William II finally expressed his opinion. Little Malky and Plotwitz were very unwilling, but that was the end of their conversation, and it was useless for them to say anything else. In addition, the two are not fools, and they can naturally feel the attitude of William II. Obviously, William II was inclined towards Qin Tian. Damn it, His Majesty obviously supports Oscar. If this goes on, even if the result of the investigation is not good for Oscar, I'm afraid he won't be able to drive him out of the 8th Army. Protwitz was worried. At this time, little Maoki gave him a wink. Protwitz hesitated for a moment, but he still bit the bullet and opened his mouth. Your Majesty, although His Majesty has the money to support the construction of the army, however, the reforms he implemented in the 8th Army cannot be determined to be correct. If there is a mistake, the consequences will be disastrous. According to our battle plan, after the outbreak of war, the absolute main force of the army is used on the Western Front. The Eastern Front is only supported by the 8th Army. Once the 8th Army is unable to resist, the entire Eastern Front will collapse. This will lead to the overall strategy of the Empire. A major mistake made the Empire lose the war. Therefore, I don't think we can take such a risk. At least, we can't take risks until the war is won. Lieutenant General Protwitz said. Such a remark was obviously not something that Plotwitz could have imagined, but it was told to him by little Malky. When necessary, let Lieutenant General Plotwitz raise it. Of course, Lieutenant General Protwitz also knew that, after saying these words, he would undoubtedly offend Qin Tian to death, and even make William II hate him. However, because of the hatred for Qin Tian in his heart, Lieutenant General Protwitz no longer cares about thinking about those things. My reforms will not cause the 8th Army to collapse, but will only further enhance the combat effectiveness of the 8th Army. By then, the 8th Army will be able to withstand the Russian attack, and buy more time for the Western Front. Qin Tian said confidently. His Royal Highness, of course you can say that. However, there is no basis for words. How can others believe this? After all, once defeated, the consequences will be too serious, and no one can afford such consequences. Zio Malky also said darkly. Suddenly, Qin Tian was cornered. Although Qin Tian firmly believes that his military system reform can make the 8th Army more powerful, this cannot be proved. After all, it can only be proved by passing the test on the battlefield. And the war has not yet broken out, so naturally there is no way to prove it. Your Excellency, Chief of Staff, you have gone too far. How can the Crown Prince prove this? Von Falkenhayn said angrily. In his opinion, little Malky and Lieutenant General Plotwitz are really shameless. Actually, on this issue, he couldn't let go. If you want to prove it, it is actually very simple. Wait until the reform of the military system of the 8th Army is completed, and conduct an exercise. General Waldsee suggested. There is an essential difference between drills and actual combat. The results of the drills are also unreliable. Little Maoki shook his head. William II frowned tightly. Zio Maoki's aggressive attitude made him very dissatisfied. One is his playmate, the other is his son, which makes it difficult for him to make a choice. On the other hand, there is a huge difference in the power of the emperors in the East and the West. Western emperors seem to have a lot of power, but a lot of power is restricted, and they cannot do whatever they want. Qin Tian's complexion is not very good looking either. He knew that little Moki would make trouble for him, but he didn't expect the other party to be so persistent. After being silent for a while, Qin Tian smiled. Well, I guarantee that in future wars, the 8th Army will resist the Russians' attack, and buy time for the Western Front. Of course, according to the Schlieffen plan, the 8th Army the 8th Corps only needs to last for 6 to 8 weeks. I think there should be no problem with that. Your Highness, what guarantee do you have? Little Moki asked with narrowed eyes. If I fail to do so, I will voluntarily give up the right to inherit the throne. In this case, you should be satisfied, right? Qin Tian looked at little Malky and said coldly. What? Everyone was stunned, including William II. Everyone did not expect that Qin Tian would even block his crown prince position. This is too crazy. If you lose a promise made in front of so many people, you can't go back on it. Even Zio Maoki and Plotwitz did not expect Qin Tian to say such a thing. Chapter 137, Immortal. His Royal Highness von Falkenhayn was very anxious and wanted to prevent Qin Tian from using the succession to the throne as a bet. Little Malky and Plutwitz couldn't help flashing a gleam of joy in their eyes. Pulling Qin Tian down from the position of crown prince was what they longed for. However, they originally thought they had no chance. But he never expected that Qin Tian would take the initiative to use the crown prince as a guarantee. This is undoubtedly a God-sent opportunity. As long as the 8th Army fails to withstand the Russian attack in future wars, then Qin Tian will definitely resign as crown prince on his own initiative. If you can't become the crown prince, you won't be able to inherit the throne, but you're just an ordinary prince. Xiao Maoqi and Plutwitz naturally no longer need to be afraid of Qin Tian's revenge on them. All the worries in their hearts naturally dissipated. Little Malky and Plutwitz had already made up their minds. Once the war breaks out, it will definitely cause Qin Angel a lot of stumbling blocks. Let the 8th Army be defeated by the Russians in the war as much as possible. In this case, Qin Tian will lose. In the eyes of both of them, personal interests are undoubtedly the most important. As for national interests, these need to be put on the back burner. William II sat on his throne and saw all this in his eyes. He took a deep look at Malky and Plutwitz and then said to Qin Tian, "Oscar, have you thought it through? You can't joke about these things." King William II knew very well that Qin Tian was a person who never fought unprepared battles. If he dares to make such a decision, then he must be sure. However, this is about the succession to the throne of the German Empire. No one is taking this lightly. "Father, I'm not joking. I've already thought it through," Qin Tian replied solemnly. King William II nodded. "Okay, let's do it according to His Highness the Crown Prince's opinion. If the 8th Army fails to withstand the Russian attack in future wars, he will resign as the Crown Prince." Hearing what William II said, little Malky and Plutwitz couldn't help but smile on their faces. "Father, now that I have made such a promise, then, can the reform of the military system of the 8th Army continue?" Qin Tian asked. He placed such a big bet, isn't it, for the continued advancement of the military system reform? Of course, it seemed like Qin Tian was taking a risk. But Qin Tian believed that the 8th Army, which had completed the reform of the military system and was equipped with new weapons, would undergo a radical change. Combat power will be greatly improved. At that time, let alone resisting the Russian attack, even if it is to defeat the Russians, it is not impossible. As long as he can win, Qin Tian will naturally fulfill his promise, and no one will ask him to resign as the Crown Prince. "Your Excellency, Chief of Staff, what do you think?" William II looked at little Malky. "Your Majesty, since His Highness is so confident, let His Highness carry out the reform of the military system in the 8th Army. If it can be successful, it will be a great thing, and it can even be promoted in the entire army." Xiao Maoqi's expression was serious smile. Although he said so, in fact, he clearly thought that Qin Tian had no chance of winning. Although the combat effectiveness of the Russians is terrible, they have a lot of troops. The standing army of more than 1 million troops, once mobilized, can expand the number of troops to 5 or 6 million, or even more. Even if it is just the standing army launching an attack, it cannot be resisted by the hundreds of thousands of people in the 8th Army. Since this is the case, then let this matter be like this, William II said. "Yes, Your Majesty," everyone replied. Everyone left the office of William II one after another, but Qin Tian was left behind. "Oscar, you were too impulsive just now. I don't know, how did this happen between you and little Maoqi? You are the Crown Prince of the Empire and my son. Little Maoqi is the Chief of Staff of the Imperial Army, and even more so, I playmates from childhood to adulthood. Your relationship is very stiff, which makes it difficult for me." William II looked distressed. "Father, I have always wanted to improve the relationship with the Chief of Staff. I even proposed to name the second-tier battlecruiser the Molt-class battlecruiser, in order to ease the relationship. But it's a pity that the Chief of Staff seems to have a prejudice against him and has been looking for trouble for me. Now, he is pressing harder and harder. I have no choice but to stand up and fight." Qin Tian looked very innocent. Well, let you go. However, this time you take the succession to the throne as a bet. Are you really sure? Once you fail, you will never have a chance. to go back on your word. William II, I'm a little worried. Don't worry, father, this is the result of my deliberation. I believe that after the reform of the military system, the combat effectiveness of the 8th Army, which has been replaced with new weapons, will be doubled. Even if the Russians cannot be defeated, but insist on 6 and 8 weeks, there should be no problem. Qin Tian seemed very confident. King William II nodded. If Qin Tian could really do it, it would be great. However, if Qin Tian can't do it, even if he is the emperor, it's not easy to show favoritism on this issue. William II finally gained some confidence in Qin Tian after learning about the content of the military system reform and the weapons and equipment of all levels of troops from Qin Tian in detail. He thought that Qin Tian might really be able to create miracles. Of course, this is not enough, and it is also necessary to prevent others from using other malicious means. William II also made up his mind, if little Maoki took the initiative to make trouble again, he would never tolerate it again. Qin Tian didn't stay in the palace for long. He still needed to go to the German Arms Company and urge them to produce the weapons and equipment needed by the 8th Army as soon as possible. After making such a bet, Qin Tian has no way to turn back and can only go one way, to the dark. Therefore, he must do his best. Of course, in Qin Tian's heart, he also hated the little Maoki who kept getting him into trouble. Little Maoki, this time, we are going to die forever. When the 8th Army defeats the Russians, I will see what you have to say. At that time, I will make you unable to be the chief of the general staff. Don't even think about keeping it. Qin Tian swore secretly. Qin Tian is not a saint in the first place. It is impossible for someone to slap him on the left cheek, and he still sends his face up. Little Maoki and Plutvis treated him like this, so he naturally wanted revenge. Chapter 138. Cultivation of famous generals. Your Highness. Qin Tian was called just as he walked out of the palace. It turned out that the Minister of War von Falkenhayn was waiting there. Minister of the Army. Qin Tian walked over. Your Highness, I have something to say to your Highness. Well, let's talk in the car. Qin Tian nodded. The two got into von Falkenhayn's car. The driver has already got out of the car, and the security personnel are also on guard a few meters away from the car. Your Highness, little Maoki and Pritwitz have gone too far today. They actually persecuted His Highness like this. However, your Highness shouldn't be impulsive and fall into their trap. Feng? Falkenhayn is worried. I know they deliberately provoked me. However, I have confidence in the 8th Army. I believe that the future 8th Army will be able to withstand the Russian attack. Qin Tian seemed very confident. Although von Falkenhayn was willing to believe in Qin Tian, he was the Minister of War and was very familiar with the situation of the German army and the situation of the Russian army. In his opinion, the 8th Army's chances of winning are not great. But this is the end of the matter, and it is useless for him to say anything else. May God bless your Highness. Don't worry, Your Excellency the Minister of War. God will definitely be on my side. Qin Tian smiled. However, Your Excellency the Minister of War, I think what you should think about is, after the 8th Army has resisted the Russian attack, and proved that the 8th Army's military system reform is correct, can you take this opportunity to remove Moltke from the General Assembly? He has been the Chief of Staff for many years. In my opinion, with his ability, he is simply not qualified for the position of Chief of Staff. If we can take this opportunity to oust him, that is undoubtedly the best thing. At that time, Your Excellency can also serve as the Chief of the General Staff. Qin Tian said. Von Falkenhayn's eyes immediately brightened. Indeed, according to Qin Tian, if the 8th Legion succeeds, it will undoubtedly prove that Maoki is wrong. Then, naturally, he should pay the price for it. Resigning from the position of Chief of Staff can be regarded as an explanation for this. At that time, the position of Chief of Staff, isn't that still his? Your Highness, if you need me to do anything, just tell me. Von Falkenhayn, keep an eye on little Maoki. I'm not afraid of his provocations in the open. However, I'm worried that he will make a stumbling block. Qin Tian said. Don't worry, Your Highness. I will keep an eye on him, and I will never let him cause trouble for you. Von Falkenhayn promised, patted his chest. Qin Tian nodded. It would be best if Zhao Maoki didn't make trouble. By the way, the few people on this list, you find a way to transfer to the 8th Army, I will use it. Qin Tian handed a piece of paper to von Falkenhayn. Although I don't know why Qin Tian wanted to find these people, von Falkenhayn still agreed wholeheartedly. After Qin Tian left, von Falkenhayn opened the list. There are only 3 names above, namely Fritz Erich von Manstein, Heinz William Guderian and Erwin Rommel. Von Falkenhayn couldn't help but frowned, because he didn't know any of these 3 people. However, Qin Tian seemed to attach great importance to them. Therefore, he had to go all out to find it. It is normal for von Falkenhayn not to know these 3 people. Both Manstein and Guderian are in their early 20s. Rommel was only 18 years old. However, in another time and space, they were the 3 famous generals of the famous Third Reich. During the foreign wars of the Third Reich, these few people made great military exploits. Of course, personal ability is also extremely good. Qin Tian hoped that in this time and space, he would train them before they made a fortune, so that they could show their talents in advance. In this case, he can be regarded as having his own team. In future wars, these young famous generals will definitely shine. Qin Tian didn't stay in Berlin much, especially since Princess Gundlind was not in Berlin, but returned to Munich, so there was no point in staying in Berlin. After returning to Königsberg, Hindenburg and Ludendorff immediately joined hands. Your Highness, we all know what happened in Berlin. Little Moltke and Prittwitz are too much. But His Highness is using the succession of the throne as a bet. This bet is too big. Hindenburg sighed. There's no way around it. Little Malky and Prittwitz have been aggressive all the time. If I don't satisfy them, they will keep holding on. However, I believe that the 8th Army will definitely in future wars, they will defeat the Russians. At that time, they will naturally have nothing to say. Qin Tian looked confident. That's the end of the matter, and that's the only way. Ludendorff also nodded. I have already urged the German Arms Company and Krupp Company. They will give priority to supplying the weapons and equipment we need. The reorganization of the troops must be accelerated. I don't want the war that broke out in a few years. I really will lose. Qin Tian said. Don't worry, Your Royal Highness. We will do our best to ensure victory. Hindenburg promised. Now they have no choice but to fight to the death. If he lost, Qin Tian would certainly lose his crown prince position. But again, they can't escape the good. Their military career will even end because of this. 1 month later, Manstein and Guderian went to the 8th Army to report. The current rank of both of them is only second lieutenant. They are also confused about this transfer order. As for Rommel, Falkenhayn replied that he was not found in the army system. Qin Tian thought for a while, and it should be that Rommel hadn't joined the army yet, so he had to give up temporarily. Qin Tian personally received Manstein and Guderian, which flattered them. After some encouragement, both of them had a good impression of Qin Tian. Qin Tian assigned the 2 of them to the staff of the 8th Army, and together with Ludendorff presided over the reorganization of the army, and the military rank was directly promoted by 1 level. Qin Tian planned to let them stay in the army staff headquarters for a while, and then make arrangements later. Manstein is a master tactician, suitable to be the chief of staff. Guderian and Rommel, who had already been booked by Qin Tian, were handsome talents. Qin Tian still wanted to let them be the commanders of the armored forces after the tanks were developed. Chapter 139, Big Wedding. Qin Tian stayed in Königsberg for half a year, and did not leave until the reorganization of the 8th Army was completed. Although the German Arms Company has not yet produced all the weapons and equipment needed by the 8th Army, by the end of the year at the latest, it will be able to arm the 8th Army to the teeth. At that time, the various firepower of the 8th Army will surpass the entire German army, and even the world. Under such circumstances, it would be meaningless for Qin Tian to stay in Königsberg any longer. The training of the troops can be left to General Hindenburg and Major General Ludendorff. Yes, before leaving Königsberg, Qin Tian used his connections to once again get Ludendorff promoted, and became a major general. Moreover, the word generation was removed, and he officially became the chief of staff of the 8th Army. There is another important reason why Qin Tian returned to Berlin, that is, Princess Gundlind's 18th birthday is coming soon. This also means that their wedding day is approaching. Although Qin Tian was busy with official duties and spent little time with Princess Gundland, Princess Gundland did not complain and always supported Qin Tian's work, which moved Qin Tian very much. On August 12, 1909, Princess Gundland's 18th birthday party was held in Munich, and Qin Tian rushed to Munich in person. Their wedding date has been fixed, that is 1 month later. The imperial crown prince is going to marry the Bavarian princess, which is a big event for the entire German Empire. Although, there are still quite a few noble ladies who are still worried about Qin Tian's choice of Princess Gundland. However, no one can change this. On September 18th, the newly completed Berlin Cathedral, the upper-class nobles, social celebrities, senior government officials and military generals of the German Empire all gathered here. Other countries have also sent special envoys or envoys to Germany to attend the wedding as representatives. Even the members of the Allied powers, whose relations with the German Empire became more and more tense, also sent blessings for the wedding. The Diocese of Berlin presided over the wedding of Qin Tian and Princess Gundland. Of course, if Qin Tian is willing, he can even invite the Pope of Rome to officiate the wedding for him. It's just that Qin Tian is too lazy to bother. Qin Tian in military uniform is waiting for his bride. When King Ludwig III appeared in the church with Princess Gundland on his arm and put her hand on Qin Tian felt something called responsibility. From now on, he is no longer alone. He still has a wife to love, and in the future, they will have many children. Therefore, Qin Tian is no longer living for himself, nor is he living for changing the fate of the German Empire, but for his family. Oscar, Gundland is my most beloved little daughter. Now, I will hand her over to you. I hope you can love her forever. King Ludwig III is not like a king at all now, but a father who loves him daughter. Father-in-law, I swear to God, that I love Gundland more than my own life. Qin Tian said with sincerity. Ludwig III nodded and handed Princess Gundland to Qin Tian with confidence. The wedding is carried out step by step according to the scheduled process. Under the witness of God, Qin Tian and Princess Gundland exchanged rings and officially became husband and wife. When the two hugged and kissed together, the audience erupted in warm cheers. Honey, Oscar is also married. I'm really happy for him. Seeing the children getting married one by one, I feel like I'm getting old. Queen Victoria's eyes turned red. No, my dear, you are not old at all. Oscar is our most outstanding son. He can find his own happiness. We should be happy for him. William II embraced his queen. William II became more and more satisfied with Qin Tian, the crown prince of the empire, or acting crown prince. Although, Qin Tian and Zhao Meoqi were very stiff, which showed their weakness in dealing with interpersonal relationships. But Qin Tian's achievements also shocked William II. Although he didn't want to admit it, the fact was that, even if it was him, at this age, it was impossible for him to be better than Qin Tian. Not to mention Crown Prince William, who has always been valued by him. Nothing but big talk. William II is also considering whether to remove the word generation on Qin Tian's head at the right time, so that he can become the real imperial prince. After the wedding ceremony, there is a grand banquet. The new couple, Qin Tian and Princess Gundland, undoubtedly became the focus of attention. With smiles on their faces, they toasted those who wished them well. After a banquet, Qin Tian only felt that his face was going to freeze with laughter. Congratulations, Your Royal Highness. Marshal Earl Tirpitz said to Qin Tian, while holding a wine glass. Your Excellency, Marshal, thank you very much. Qin Tian clinked glasses with Marshal Earl Tirpitz. Your Highness, you haven't paid attention to the Navy for a long time, right? After the honeymoon, we will find time to talk in detail. Marshal Earl Tirpitz said. Qin Tian nodded. During this period of time, his energy was mainly focused on the 8th Army, and he didn't pay much attention to the Navy. However, this doesn't mean that Qin Tian doesn't value the Navy anymore. Your Excellency, Marshal, I have always been very concerned about the Imperial Navy. When this period of time is over, let's meet directly at the Deutschland shipyard. 2 days ago, Brut told me that I asked them to make a secret weapon. Has been completed. Qin Tian said with a smile. Secret weapon? Marshal Earl Tirpitz's eyes lit up. What can be called a secret weapon by Qin Tian must be a good thing. If it weren't for the wedding scene now, the Marshal Earl Tirpitz would have dragged Qin Tian to the shipyard directly. Qin Tian didn't say much and walked towards the other guests, holding Princess Gundlin's hand. The grand banquet lasted until late at night. However, Qin Tian and Princess Gundlin left at 9 o'clock in the evening. For them, tonight will be a special night. The so-called spring night is worth $1,000, so naturally it can't be wasted on other people. Although, Qin Tian and Princess Gundlin had already ate the forbidden fruit and broke through the last step. But Qin Tian, who is still Chinese at heart, is still very much looking forward to the wedding night in the bridal chamber. This night, Qin Tian and Princess Gundlin spent a wonderful night. Chapter 140, Submarine. After the wedding, Qin Tian and Princess Gundlin started their honeymoon trip. They traveled south from Berlin, passed through the Kingdom of Bavaria, and headed for Switzerland. Although the Alps in this season are not as beautiful as in winter, they have a special flavor. Half a month later, Qin Tian and Princess Gundlin returned to Berlin. It wasn't that Qin Tian didn't want to play outside for a while, but that he was too busy. In addition, the current international situation is becoming more and more tense, and a war is imminent, which makes Qin Tian have to focus more on official affairs. Although, Qin Tian remembered that there were still a few years before the war broke out. What he wasn't sure, though, was whether wars would still break out at that time, after he'd already changed history. Therefore, Qin Tian had a sense of crisis. He hoped that the German Empire would be as fully prepared as possible before the outbreak of the war, so as to be able to change the outcome of the war. Honey, I'm going to Deutschland shipyard tomorrow, and I'll probably stay there for 2 days. Qin Tian looked at his parents and children with an apologetic expression. They were just newly married, and he was going on a business trip, which was really inappropriate. It's okay, my dear, you can go and do your work. Princess Gundlin was very magnanimous. She knew that with Qin Tian's identity and status, he had too many things to do, and it was impossible for him to be with her all day long. Princess Gundlin is already very satisfied to have such an excellent husband as Qin Tian. After all, marrying a talented crown prince is better than marrying a dude, right? What's more, she is very likely to become the queen of the empire in the future, which is undoubtedly every woman's dream. Qin Tian and Marshal Count Tirpitz took a special train to the Deutschland shipyard. Although on the way, Marshal Earl Tirpitz kept telling Qin Tian what he wanted to know what Qin Tian's so-called secret weapon was, but Qin Tian kept his mouth tight and didn't say a word on this issue, which made him Marshal Count Tirpitz was very dissatisfied, but there was nothing he could do. His Royal Highness, the strength of the Imperial Navy is growing rapidly. However, the British are also building warships like crazy. The gap between us and the British has not been able to widen. Marshal Earl Tirpitz flashed in his eyes a trace of worry. Qin Tian nodded. Marshal, it is simply unrealistic to compare the speed of shipbuilding with the British, or to compare the number of capital ships with them. The only thing we can do is to overwhelm the British in terms of single ship performance. People. Only in this way will we be able to defeat them and win in future naval battles. It is true to say so, but if the British have too much advantage in the number of capital ships, our chances of winning will not be too great. In the view of Marshal Earl Tirpitz, the quality advantage is very important. But again, a quantitative advantage is also indispensable. In many cases, quantitative changes will lead to qualitative changes. Well, so we need to prepare some secret weapons for the Navy to increase the combat power of the Navy as much as possible. Qin Tian said. Qin Tian knew that the German Navy could not have more capital ships than the British Navy. Therefore, he can only use other methods to weaken the strength of the British Navy. For example, using submarines or aircraft carrier-based aircraft to attack the capital ships of the British Navy will further weaken the strength of the British Navy. In this way, the pressure on the German Navy will be greatly reduced during the decisive battle at sea. Marshal Earl Tirpitz nodded, and he couldn't help but look forward to the secret weapon Qin Tian talked about. The current German Navy already has 2 levels of capital ships and 1 level of battle cruisers. The Nassau-class battleship, the Wittelsbach-class battleship and the Blücher-class battlecruiser have been in service one after another, and the Moltke-class battlecruiser and the Caesar-class battleships are all under construction. In particular, most of the construction of the Molt-class battlecruiser has been completed, and it is expected to be ready for service next year. The Caesar-class battleships will also enter service on a large scale from the end of next year to the beginning of the next year. This will greatly enhance the strength of the German Navy. Your Highness, do you have any ideas about the construction plan for the next battleship? Marshal Earl Tirpitz asked. Through the construction of several battleships in succession, no one in the Navy raised any objections to Qin Tian's design. Even the experts from the Naval Technical Committee have no nonsense. Qin Tian thought for a while, then nodded. The capital ship of the next level. The idea is to further increase the displacement of the battleship, so as to carry a larger caliber main gun, and have a thicker armor. Larger caliber main guns. The Caesar-class battleships, the Wichers-Bach-class battleships, and the Molt-class battlecruisers all have 343mm main guns. Is it possible that the next tier battleships will be equipped with 343mm main guns? Is the 380mm main gun? Marshal Count Tirpitz asked. Marshal Earl Tirpitz knew that Qin Tian had always had a soft spot for increasing the caliber of the battleship's main guns. Otherwise, the caliber of the main guns of the battleships of the German Navy would not have been increased to 343mm. I'm afraid that at this time, the caliber of the German Navy's capital ships is still 280mm or 305mm. Well, the 380mm main gun is inevitable. Krupp has already started research in this area at my request. It is expected that breakthroughs will be made next year. Our next level, the construction of the capital ship, can start next year. In this case, there will be enough time. Qin Tian said. Marshal Earl Tirpitz nodded. Of course he would not have any objections to this. The stronger the Navy is, the more comfortable he will be as the Minister of the Navy. Qin Tian is also secretly thinking, starting from the next level of capital ships, to build capital ships equipped with 380mm main guns. In this way, if the war still broke out in 1914, the German Navy will have a first-level battleship equipped with 380mm main guns. Capital ship. Even the second-tier capital ships equipped with 380mm main guns will not be in service for long. As for the British Navy, I'm afraid that there will be no capital ships equipped with 381mm main guns at all. By that time, the German Navy will have a greater advantage. After the special train arrived at the Deutschland shipyard, Marshal Count Tirpitz walked directly to the slipway. He couldn't wait to see what the secret weapon Qin Tian was talking about was. However, after seeing the true face of Mount Lu, Marshal Count Tirpitz couldn't help being dumbfounded. Your Highness, isn't this a submarine? This is the secret weapon you said? Marshal Count Tirpitz couldn't laugh or cry. Chapter 141, Wolf Pack Tactics. For Marshal Count Tirpitz, submarines are no strangers. In 1906, the Germania shipyard built the first submarine, codenamed U-1. However, submarines in this era have slow speed and short endurance, so they can only be used as weapons for offshore defense. The major naval powers don't pay much attention to the development of submarines at all, thinking that they are just weapons used by weak and small countries for sneak attacks. Even within the German Navy, submarines are not taken seriously. Especially within the German Navy, submarines are not taken seriously when the German Navy has more and more large surface warships. Almost everyone is keen to build large surface warships. For submarines, weapons that can only hide underwater and carry out sneak attacks, it is simply impossible. Scoffed. Marshal Count Tirpitz was also affected by this aspect. If Qin Tian hadn't been the one who used the submarine as a secret weapon, he would have scolded him long ago. However, Qin Tian's identity and status are not the same, and Qin Tian has greatly promoted the development of the German Navy. This also left Marshal Count Tirpitz speechless. At the same time, he couldn't help guessing, could it be that the submarine has other potentials that he didn't see? Your Excellency Marshal, that's right. The secret weapon I'm talking about is a submarine. However, the submarine in front of you is not a simple submarine like the U-1 submarine, but a powerful submarine that can really be used in actual combat. Second, assure you, if the German Navy can have a strong underwater submarine force, it will bring us unexpected surprises. Qin Tian seemed very confident. Marshal Earl Tirpitz couldn't help frowning. The submarine in front of him is indeed different from the U-1 submarine. It is not only larger in size, but also more beautiful in shape. Yes, it is indeed beautiful. Compared with this submarine, the U-1 submarine is simply an ugly duckling. Mr. Huolan, please introduce this powerful submarine to the Secretary of the Navy. Qin Tian said to an old man. This old man is the famous John Holland, the first person in the world to create a submarine capable of actual combat. Even though he was over 60 years old, Qin Tian still invited him out of the mountain. Of course, a big reason why John Holland was willing to help Germany build submarines was because John Holland was Irish. The Irish have been fighting for independence. Qin Tian assured John Holland that if Germany could defeat Britain in the future war, it would definitely support the independence of Ireland. Therefore, John Holland will do his best to help Germany in this regard. Combined with Qin Tian's unique insights in this area, Deutsche Shipyard was able to build submarines ahead of this era. Yes, Your Royal Highness. John Holland nodded. This is a brand new submarine designed and built by us. His Royal Highness named it the U-100 class submarine. This submarine has a surface displacement of 328 tons and an underwater displacement of 279 tons. It is 42.7 meters long and 4 meters wide, with a height of 8.6 meters and a draft of 3.9 meters. It uses 2 diesel engines and electric motors as power. The maximum speed on the surface is 13 knots, and the maximum speed underwater is 7 knots. The surface endurance is 3100 nautical miles, the underwater endurance is 43 nautical miles, and the maximum diving depth it is 100 meters. The weapon is 3 533mm torpedo tubes, arranged in the front 2 and 1 behind. In addition, the ammunition warehouse inside the submarine also stores 6 torpedoes, a total of 9 torpedoes. In front of the pressure hull of the submarine, there is a door 75mm naval gun, with 100 rounds of ammunition. John Holland said proudly. Indeed, it can be seen from these data that the performance of the U-100 class submarine is very advanced, not only greatly surpassing the U-1 submarine built by Germany itself, but also surpassing the submarines built by other countries in the world. Your Excellency, Marshal, the performance of this submarine is undoubtedly excellent, especially the strong endurance, enough to sail from Germany to the east coast of the United States. Once war breaks out, the entire East Atlantic waters will become the hunting area for our submarines. At that time, whether it is the enemy's warships or other ships, they will be under the threat of our submarines. If we can equip hundreds of such submarines, it will be enough to strangle the British sea transportation lines. Once the British, if the sea transportation line of the 3 islands is cut off by us, the British will die, Qin Tian said. Marshal Count Tirpitz nodded. Although he thinks that a submarine attack is a very ungentlemanly way of fighting. However, in war, all means can be used. Any tactics are fine, as long as they can defeat the enemy. Your Highness, this submarine is indeed very good. However, I still think that surface warships are the guarantee of victory. Marshal Count Tirpitz said. Of course, submarines cannot decide the outcome of a naval battle, because submarines are weapons of destruction, while surface warships are weapons of control. Our submarines are mainly used to attack the British sea transportation lines, and they attacked the British main fleet to relieve the pressure on the surface fleet, Qin Tian said. Marshal Count Tirpitz agreed with this. Although there are still some doubts about the real combat power of submarines, Marshal Earl Tirpitz is not opposed to purchasing submarines. Your Excellency, Marshal, in order to fully display the combat effectiveness of these submarines, I have thought of a tactic. I named it the Wolf Pack tactic. That is, a few or a dozen submarines are ambushed in the enemy's fleet, or within the fleet. A sneak attack on the way it must pass. I think it will be disastrous for the enemy. It will be better if it is at night. I think no fleet can escape this kind of tactical attack will definitely make them pay an extremely heavy price, Qin Tian said with a smile. After listening to Qin Tian's introduction, Marshal Count Tirpitz couldn't help chill feelings all over his body. He had to admit that this was undoubtedly an extremely vicious tactic, able to give full play to the advantages of the submarine. Of course, it would be great if this tactic was in the hands of the German Navy. The enemy will suffer heavy losses under the blow of their tactics. Your tactics, Highness. This tactic is really good. It seems that a weapon like a submarine can really do a lot. Marshal Earl Tirpitz was very satisfied. Subsequently, Marshal Count Tirpitz returned to the Ministry of the Navy, and after discussing with other officials, he decided to purchase 50 U-100 class submarines first. If there are subsequent improvements, another 50 will be purchased, bringing the number of submarines in the German Navy to 100. Qin Tian stayed at Deutschland shipyard and discussed with John Holland about the improvement of the submarine. Chapter 142, Fighter. Your Highness, Mr. Gustav Lilienthal wants to see you. After Qin Tian returned to Berlin, Karl von John immediately told him the news. I see, let him come to see me right away. Qin Tian said immediately. Gustav Lilienthal is the person in charge of Qin Tian's fighter plan. Before and after, Qin Tian has already invested 20 million marks in this plan, and let the German engine manufacturing company fully cooperate with them in the development of aero engines. Now, is it finally time for the results? Although all countries are developing their own aviation vehicles. However, Qin Tian believed that with his help in an almost cheating way, Germany could surpass other countries in this aspect and be at the forefront of the world. After all, as a latecomer, Qin Tian knows better which direction of development is correct and will not take detours, thus saving more time. Half an hour later, Gustav Lilienthal appeared in Qin Tian's office. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. Gustav Lilienthal admired Qin Tian very much. Although the Imperial Prince is only 21 years old, it's not just because of Qin Tian's strong support that their aviation dream can continue to develop. It is also because Qin Tian also has unique insights in the field of aviation, allowing them to make rapid progress in the development of aviation vehicles. Well, Mr. Lilienthal, please sit down. Has your research and development been successful? Qin Tian asked. Yes, Your Highness. The first aircraft we developed has been successful. Yesterday, we conducted the first test flight, and it was a complete success. Therefore, I invite Your Highness to watch our second test flight. Gustav Lilienthal said excitedly. Very well, when is the second test flight? I will definitely go. Qin Tian nodded. He is still very much looking forward to Germany's future fighter jets. In future wars, whoever holds their supremacy will be able to win. Of course, it's too early to tell. Even after the advent of aircraft, there is still a long way to go to become the protagonist of the battlefield. However, Qin Tian still hopes that these flying troops can form combat effectiveness before the war breaks out. Not only the army needs the help of these fighters, but the navy is also eager to see through. Only by developing a carrier-based aircraft that can take off on an aircraft carrier can Qin be able to build aircraft carriers with confidence and boldness, making these aircraft carriers the trump card to defeat the British Navy in future wars. Yes, Your Highness. 3 days later, we will conduct the second test flight. Gustav Lilienthal said excitedly. Okay, I will definitely go then. Qin Tian said. 3 days later, the weather was fine. Autumn in northern Germany is crisp and clear. Deutsche Industries AG has established an aircraft research and development center in Oranienburg, north of Berlin. Gustav Lilienthal and his team worked there. In the whole team, there are not only German aviation experts, but also many foreign experts. These experts were all found by Qin Tian using various means. Of course, some people came for the sake of profit, while others were coerced and had to come. Qin Tian arrived in Oranienburg early in the morning. On the runway of the small airport of the R&D center, a simple plane was parked there, like an ugly duckling. Indeed, in Qin Tian's eyes, this plane is like an ugly duckling. However, this represents the future of the German aviation industry. Qin Tian also believed that soon this ugly duckling would grow into a real white swan. Your Highness, this is the aircraft we developed. Gustav Lilienthal said. Qin Tian walked over and circled the plane. This is a biplane, and it is naturally incomparable with those jet aircraft of later generations. However, this is also the best aircraft that can be developed under the existing technical conditions. Let me introduce this plane. Qin Tian said. Wilbur, Orville, which one of you would like to introduce this aircraft to Your Highness? Gustav Lilienthal asked. Wilbur and Orville are the famous Wright brothers. However, after Qin Tian paid a sky-high acquisition fee, the two ended their careers in the United States and joined the fighter jet research and development project led by Gustav Lilienthal. "Brother, come on," Orville Wright said. Wilbur Wright nodded. "Your Highness, this aircraft was designed according to your reminder. The length of the aircraft is 7.3 meters, the wingspan is 9.5 meters, and the height is 2.4 meters. The takeoff weight is 500 kilograms. The maximum flight speed is 120 kilometers per hour. The maximum ceiling is 2800 meters, and the endurance is 1.5 hours. The weapon is a 12.7 millimeters heavy machine gun with 200 rounds of ammunition. In addition, there are two it can carry 225 kilograms aerial bombs," said Wilbur Wright. "So, this plane is barely capable of actual combat," Qin Tian said. "Yes, Your Highness." Gustav Lilienthal nodded. "Let the pilot start the test flight." Qin Tian didn't say much. Although, in Qin Tian's eyes, this aircraft is still far from actual combat. But in any case, a breakthrough of zero has been achieved. First solve the problem of whether or not, and then further develop on this basis. Qin Tian believed that they would be able to develop an aircraft that would satisfy him in a short time. "Okay, Your Highness." Gustav Lilienthal nodded. The test pilot climbed into the plane after saluting Qin Tian. With the help of the ground crew, the propeller of the plane spun up. Then, the test pilot released the brakes, and the plane began to taxi on the runway. After taxiing for more than 200 meters, the nose of the plane began to rise. Under the surging power of the engine, the plane rushed into the sky like a sharp arrow. Papa. Qin Tian took the lead in applauding. After all, flying was undoubtedly very dangerous in the early 20th century. If you are not careful, the machine will be destroyed. So, every test pilot is courageous. Even though Qin Tian is the crown prince of the empire, he should pay his respects to these test pilots. The plane is flying in the air, doing test flight actions one by one. Although it is a little clumsy, in general, there is already a trace of fighter jets of later generations. Qin Tian believes that, based on this fighter, Germany will develop better fighters in the future. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143, Air Force Ambition. The plane flew a circle over the R&D center and then landed. The whole process was very safe and there was no problem. After the test pilot got off the plane, he was even warmly greeted by Qin Tian. For such a warrior, Qin Tian undoubtedly admired him very much. It is precisely because of these people that Germany's aviation industry will develop rapidly. Although, Qin Tian really wanted to experience the fun of flying. However, he still didn't say it in the end. Because he knew that once he said something, he would be strongly opposed by others. Today's planes are simply too dangerous. Qin Tian is the crown prince of the empire. How could he casually take his own life as a joke? After the test flight, Qin Tian and the others went to the meeting room. Although he was satisfied with the progress of the Research and Development Center, the fighter jet codenamed F1 in front of him still fell far short of his expectations. "Everyone, first of all, I would like to congratulate you on your success. It is undoubtedly not easy to develop an excellent aircraft according to my requirements in such a short period of time. I know that you have been very happy these days. For your hard work, on behalf of the empire, I thank you for your efforts. It is because of this that the empire can be at the forefront of the world in the field of aviation." After listening to Qin Tian's words, the eyes of many German engineers and experts were red. Isn't the reason why they work so hard for Germany to become stronger? Even those non-German engineers and experts were very moved. Of course, because of the success of the project, they also received a lot of bonuses. "Your Highness, this is what we should do," Gustav Lilienthal said. "However, what I want to tell everyone is that, although you have achieved initial success, there is still a big gap from the real actual combat standard. Therefore, I hope that you can make persistent efforts and develop better performance as soon as possible." "Fighter aircraft," Qin Tian said. "Yes, Your Highness." Gustav Lilienthal and others replied. Nowadays, almost all aircraft in various countries are biplanes. Although biplanes have great advantages in terms of flight stability and hovering performance, they have a fatal disadvantage in terms of speed. In the next step, I hope that everyone will use monoplanes in the future. The fighters equipped by the Empire will be fighters with a speed of more than 200 km per hour and a range of more than 500 km. I know that this requirement is difficult for everyone, but I believe that everyone will be able to. It was done. Qin Tian said. What Qin Tian said was the German Fokker type fighter in another time and space, the advanced fighter that created the Fokker type disaster. After the German Air Force equipped a large number of Fokker type fighter jets, the pilots of the Allied powers could not live for 6 weeks, and they were also called Widowmakers. Now, with the full support of Deutsche Engine Manufacturing Company, at least in terms of engines, Germany is already at the leading level in the world. Therefore, it should not be a big problem for Qin Tian to ask them to develop an aircraft that is slightly ahead of the Fokker fighter. What's more, the current Aircraft Research and Development Center in Germany has gathered the top group of people from the whole of Germany and even the world. It should not be a big problem for Germany to achieve leapfrog development in this area. Your Highness, the request you made is indeed very difficult. However, we will do our best. We will strive to realize Your Highness's request within 3 years. Gustav Lilienthal said. Qin Tian nodded. Although 3 years is not a short time, if he can really succeed, that would be pretty good. At that time, as long as Germany produces on a large scale, even if only a few hundred new fighter jets are equipped at the beginning of the war, it will be enough to defeat the air forces of other countries. In addition to fighter jets, we also need to develop bombers. Bombers are divided into land-based bombers and ship-based bombers. Land-based bombers must have a large bomb load and a long range. As for other aspects, they can be slightly worse. However, carrier-based bombers require high-strength short takeoff distance and as much bomb load as possible. I hope that you will be successful in these aspects in the next few years. If successful, you will be able to. At that time, everyone will get a valuable bonus. Qin Tian said. Yes, Your Highness. Everyone replied. Although, in their opinion, many of Qin Tian's requests are really unimaginable. However, after thinking about it for a while, they had to admit that these requests made by Qin Tian were too forward-looking, especially carrier-based aircraft, when all countries still use aircraft in the airspace on land. Qin Tian has already started planning to use it at sea. Once it is really successful, this will undoubtedly further improve the strength of the German Navy. Qin Tian hopes to at least develop a torpedo attack aircraft before the war breaks out. In this way, the German Navy will be able to build several aircraft carriers carrying these torpedo attack aircraft in the future. Even if it can only mount light torpedoes or medium torpedoes, once the enemy's surface warships are besieged, very good results can be obtained. Of course, Qin Tian also knew that it was not realistic to develop a torpedo attack aircraft that could mount heavy aviation torpedoes before the First World War. Even if it is developed, it cannot take off and land on an aircraft carrier. The deck of an aircraft carrier is only that long. A plane that is too large simply cannot take off in such a short distance. After leaving Oranienburg, Qin Tian began to plan the development of the Air Force. If you have an airplane, you need someone to do it. Although the performance of the current aircraft is not up to standard, these aircraft can be used to train pilots first. When more advanced aircraft were developed, Germany had enough pilots to fly them into combat. It is not realistic to directly establish an air force in one step. Even the establishment of an army air force or a naval air force is not realistic. On the one hand, there will be many obstacles, and not everyone knows the role of the plane. On the other hand, it is also easy to leak secrets. Qin Tian regarded these planes as Germany's trump card. Whether it is a land-based air force or an aircraft carrier's carrier-based aircraft, it must be kept under high secrecy. After much deliberation, Qin Tian decided to set up an aviation team within the 8th Army, and at the same time select qualified personnel from the 8th Army for training, striving to train as many pilots as possible to prepare for future wars. Of course, once the time is right, the 8th Army Air Force will develop into the Imperial Army Air Force, and in the future it will develop into the Imperial Air Force. Chapter 144. The death of the King of England. In April 1910, Qin Tian submitted to the German Navy the design of the next level of battleships and battle cruisers, namely the King-class battleship and the Derfliner-class battle cruiser. Experts from the Ministry of the Navy and the Naval Technical Committee have reviewed the design proposals of these two classes of capital ships, although there are some disputes in their construction because of the high cost. However, Marshal Earl Tirpitz's firm attitude allowed the design plans of these two classes of battleships to be approved. William II also respected Qin Tian's opinion and did not raise any objections. At the end of April, the construction of the King-class battleship and the Derfliner-class battle cruiser began one after another. The King-class battleship is even bigger, with a displacement of 37,000 tons. It is equipped with 3 triple-mounted 50 caliber 380mm main guns. This will be the largest caliber main gun ever equipped by Germany in the world. Of course, there will be capital ships equipped with larger caliber main guns in the future. In terms of defense, the thickness of the main armor of the King-class battleships has also reached 380mm, greatly enhanced the defense. Compared with the King-class battleship in another time and space, it has undergone earth-shaking changes. In terms of maximum speed, it did not decrease due to the increase in displacement. By adopting more powerful oil-fired boilers and steam turbines, the maximum speed of the King-class battleships remained above 23 knots after the approval of William II. The King-class battleship also plans to build 5 ships, namely the first ship King, the second ship Great Kerfurra, the third ship Border Governor, and the fourth ship *****, the fifth ship Queen Victoria. The Derfliner-class battle cruiser, compared with another time and space, is also completely different. Except for the same name, the rest are almost completely different. Not only has the displacement increased to 35,000 tons, but the main gun has also been replaced with 3 triple-mounted 380mm main guns, and the maximum speed has been increased to 27.5 knots. Compared with the King-class battleship, except for the slightly inferior defense, the rest are similar. It is even said that, if the Derfliner-class battle cruisers are placed on the battle line for battleship duels, there is no problem at all. The thick armor and powerful firepower have an overwhelming advantage once they encounter British battle cruisers. The thin-skinned British battle cruisers will be blown up one after another. Under Qin Tian's continuous efforts, the German Navy has finally completely changed the development track of another time and space. Although most of the battleships have the same name, they are completely different in essence. Compared with the capital ships of the German High Seas Fleet in another time and space, these capital ships are now more powerful. Of course, in order to build so many battleships, Germany is about to clean up its fortunes. If it weren't for Qin Tian and the royal family's continuous blood transfusion to the Navy would have been unable to hold on long ago. Even so, if the war fails to break out as scheduled, German finances will only collapse. Therefore, Qin Tian and the German government will not let this war drag on for too long. By 1914 at the latest, it must erupt. Only in this way can domestic conflicts be transferred through war. At the same time, by plundering the defeated country, it can make up for its own consumption in the arms race. It is not only Germany that faces such a choice, but other countries as well. A large amount of money is used in the arms race, making their fiscal deficit very serious. Once the finances fail, the country may collapse. At that time, war will become the only way to divert the public's attention. If you can defeat the enemy in the war, you can restore your own financial resources by plundering the enemy's wealth. Of course, if you lose, there will be no future. At this time, it can be said that war is inevitable. Of course, no country wants to avoid war. In fact, everyone has a consensus on the upcoming war, but they don't know when the war will break out and how it will be detonated. Germany hopes to defeat the old world colonial system established by Britain and France through war and **** more colonies. Britain and France hope to take advantage of this war to completely bring down Germany and relieve Germany's threat to them. As for Russia and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, it was for the hegemony of the Balkan Peninsula. The Americans on the other side of the ocean want to wait until the war breaks out, make a fortune from the war, and steal world hegemony at the same time. It can be said that every country has its own ghosts. Under such circumstances, war is naturally inevitable. What countries can do is to accumulate as much strength as possible so that they can win in one fell swoop in future wars. Of course, attracting more allies is also an important strategy for winning. It is almost inevitable that the major powers in the world will be involved in this war. On May 6th, a major event that shocked countries all over the world happened. King Edward VII died at Buckingham Palace from pneumonia. You must know that, although the national strength of the United Kingdom has begun to decline, it is still facing challenges from countries such as the United States and Germany. However, with their powerful navy, they are still the world's most powerful country, and their position as the supremacy of the sea is as solid as gold. The death of Edward VII was a huge shock to the whole world. Edward VII is the second child and eldest son of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. His full name is Albert Edward von Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, Duke of Cornwall, Duke of Rothesay, Earl of Dublin. Although he was unfaithful to his wife and his private life was extremely chaotic, he was still a very popular and amiable monarch and social leader. Although, when he was young, Edward VII was a lazy, luxurious, and lustful playboy. Even after becoming a prostitute, she also had many mistresses, including Sir Charles's wife, Miss Harriet Mordaunt, the wife of his entourage, Lord Ellie Foster, and Miss Anne's, the spinster, and so on. It wasn't until Queen Elizabeth died and became king that Edward VII began to restrain himself. Edward VII has a distinguished status. In terms of seniority, he can be regarded as the uncle of Kaiser Wilhelm II. The monarchs of other European countries can be regarded as his juniors. His death has also become a major event in Europe. Chapter 145. Visit England. On May 7th, William II urgently convened an imperial meeting. The content of the meeting was only one, that is, after the death of Edward VII, what would happen to Britain's foreign policy, and who should Germany send to represent Germany in Edward VII's funeral, and the enthronement of the new king. Everyone, King Edward VII has passed away. There is no doubt that Prince George will inherit the throne. Is this a good or bad thing for the German Empire? William II asked. Even though the dead person could be regarded as his uncle, he didn't even feel any sadness in his heart. In his eyes, the most important thing is still the interests of the German Empire. Your Majesty, Prince George is probably more difficult to deal with than King Edward VII. Although he is young, he is an unswerving main fighter who advocates suppressing the living space of the empire. Therefore, after Prince George succeeded to the throne, Britain's attitude towards the empire may become even tougher. The empire needs to be prepared for this, said Prime Minister Bernard von Bülow. William II nodded with an ugly face. Prince George can be regarded as his distant cousin. Although they didn't have much contact, he still knew about Prince George's character and propositions through the information obtained from various sources. Your Majesty, it is already obvious that the British are trying to trap the empire in continental Europe. They have formed an alliance with France and Russia. This alliance is undoubtedly aimed at the empire. Therefore, what the empire can do, only defeat them in future wars. The Imperial Navy is preparing for this. I believe that in the decisive battle in the future, the Imperial Navy will definitely be able to win. Admiral Earl Tirpitz, Minister of the Navy, looked confident. It is said that as the capital ships of the German Navy start construction one after another, the strength of the German Navy is also increasing rapidly. Once the war breaks out, the possibility of the German Navy winning the battle is undoubtedly very high. This naturally made Marshal Count Tirpitz full of confidence, Master of the Navy. Although the British signed treaties with France and Russia respectively, it is worth noting that none of the treaties signed by the British with France and Russia were military alliance treaties. Only France and Russia signed treaties of military alliance. Therefore, even if war breaks out, the British may not necessarily join the war, and the only enemies facing the empire may be France and Britain. Little Maoki jumped out. After getting into trouble with Qin Tian, Zhao Maoki was always extremely targeted towards Qin Tian's people. William II couldn't help but frowned. He also knew that Britain had not signed a military alliance treaty with France and Russia. If, once the war breaks out, Britain can sit on the sidelines, that would be the best. It's just that, although William II is looking forward to such a situation, He also notes that the possibility of such a situation will be very small, close to zero. The British will never stand on the sidelines. Once we go to war with France, the British will definitely join the war. British know that without their support, the French are no match for us. Once they go to war, they will definitely be defeated by us. Once the French are defeated, the Russians will be even less of a threat to us. At that time, the Empire will dominate Europe. Even with the barriers of the Channel, Britain will no longer be safe. The world hegemony of the British will not. Therefore, we are faced with a fatal challenge. Therefore, I believe that once the war breaks out, the British will definitely join the war without hesitation. Therefore, we must be fully prepared. Minister of War von Falkenhayn expressed his opinion. It's just that his opinion is completely opposite to that of Little Maoki. The contradiction between the two giants of the army is already well known. Little Maoki glared at von Falkenhayn, but the latter turned a blind eye to it. Oscar, what's your opinion? William II asked. Father, I also think that Prince George's succession to the throne is not a good thing for the Empire. It can be said that from now on, we have to give up all illusions about the British and prepare for war with all our strength. War is already inevitable. Of course, there is no way to avoid war. There is only one way, that is, from now on, Germany will give up developing the navy, giving up challenging the British hegemony, and giving up developing overseas colonies. Qin Tian said. After listening to Qin Tian's words, Wilhelm II's face turned dark, as if it was the bottom of a pot. His lifelong goal is to lead the German Empire to replace Britain and become the hegemon of the world. How is it possible to make him give up this ideal? Besides, Germany's military strength is now developing very rapidly, and William II has even seen a glimmer of hope to defeat Britain. It would be even more impossible for him to give up at this time. Since the war between us and Britain is inevitable, then, let's prepare for war, William II said. Although he still has the heart not to want to break out of war with Britain, but for the benefit of the country, if this battle has to be fought, he has no choice but to fight it. What's more, William II also believed that Germany would have a great chance of winning in future wars. Under such circumstances, he would even less want to avoid war at the expense of Germany's interests. Yes, Your Majesty, all the ministers replied. Of course, the war will bring great losses to Germany, but if the war can be won, it will also be of great benefit to Germany. Germany will replace Great Britain as the world's most powerful country. Those in power, of course, can get a lot of benefits from it. Then, King Edward VII has passed away, and Prince George is about to become king. Who should we send to England to represent the Empire at Edward VII's funeral and Prince George's coronation ceremony? William II asked. Your Majesty, let the foreign minister go. Prime Minister Bismarck suggested. William II shook his head. It is not enough for the foreign minister to represent the Empire. Oscar, you should go to England to represent the Empire. Yes, father. Qin Tian did not expect that William II would let him visit England. However, he didn't care. As the crown prince of the empire, it was one of his responsibilities to represent the empire to visit other countries. What's more, he can also take this opportunity to go to England to see the real situation. Chapter 146, Civilian Faction Overtures. On May 15th, Qin Tian left Berlin together with Foreign Minister von Kiddenwascht and went to Wilhelmshaven by train. There they will board the battleship Nassau of the Imperial Navy and head to England. Although, some are reluctant to let go of their wives, especially when Princess Gundelind was pregnant, Qin Tian didn't want to leave Germany anymore. However, as the crown prince, while enjoying power, he must also undertake corresponding obligations, which made him have to complete this visit. Fortunately, it doesn't take much time to go to the UK for a visit. Including the time spent on the road, it only takes about half a month in total. On the morning of May 16th, Qin Tian and the foreign minister boarded the battleship Nassau, the first dreadnought ship of the German Navy. Even with the follow-up and more powerful Wittelsbach-class battleships already in service, the battleship Nassau is still a well-deserved capital ship of the German Navy. What's more, compared to the battleships of the British Navy, apart from the Orion-class battleships that are under construction, the battleship Nassau can be said to be a rare opponent. Even if the Orion-class battleship is equipped with a 343mm main gun with 45 times the caliber, in terms of performance, it is not necessarily stronger than the 50 times the caliber of the Nassau 305mm main gun. Not to mention, the armor of the Nassau battleship is thicker than that of the Orion-class battleship, and its defense is stronger. Once the war starts, the battleship Nassau may be able to resist the battleship Orion. The battleship Nassau began to vibrate, and the propeller was driven by the steam turbine to rotate rapidly. Battleships also gradually changed from static to moving. When the battleship sailed out of the military port and entered the North Sea, the battleship began to accelerate. Although the battleship Nassau has a maximum speed of 21 knots, except for the fact that such a speed will break out during the test, and in future naval battles, it usually cruises at a speed of 10 knots. From Wilhelmshaven to London, the battleship Nassau needs to sail for 2 full days. However, Edward VII's funeral will be held a week later, and they still have enough time to arrive in London. Standing on the deck of the Nassau battleship, feeling the oncoming sea breeze, savoring the feeling of a huge battleship riding the wind and waves, Qin Tian was very moved. In his previous life, he was just a nauticu, but now he has become the heir to one of the world's most powerful empires. All of this is like in a dream. More importantly, this empire is completely different from another time and space. With Qin Tian's unremitting efforts, this empire is becoming stronger. Qin Tian believed that once the war broke out, they would definitely win in the future. His Royal Highness. A voice sounded behind Qin Tian. Qin Tian looked back and saw that it was the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Empire, von Kidron-Wachter. The specific name of the post of Minister of Foreign Affairs in Germany was actually Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs. Hello, Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Qin Tian nodded and said. Qin Tian also hopes to win over the important ministers of the civil servant faction of the empire. However, neither the Prime Minister Bernhard von Bülow nor the Foreign Minister von Kidron-Wachter clearly stated their support for him. They are more like staying neutral, or that William II decides who is the heir to the empire, and they support whoever. This is undoubtedly not beneficial to Qin Tian. Although, Qin Tian has already gained a lot of support from the military, the navy has all fallen to him. Among the army, at least half of the people support him. However, Zhao Meoki made it clear that he opposed him. If the civil service faction can support him, then his position is truly impregnable. Otherwise, a word from William II may prevent him from being crown prince. Of course, even William II would not easily replace the crown prince of the empire. But, who made Qin Tian still have the word generation on his head? This makes his position relatively unstable. Your Highness, it's hard to imagine that the giant ship under our feet belongs to the empire. It is a miracle that the Imperial Navy caught up with Britain in an extremely short time, and even overtook it. Von Kidron-Wachter sighed. As an important minister of the empire, von Kidron-Wachter naturally knew the real situation of the Imperial Navy. In order to prevent the outside world from knowing the true situation of its own navy, the German Navy has done a lot of deceptive work. The gun cover of the main gun is always covered on the cannon except during training. The outside world simply does not know the caliber of the main guns of the German Navy's battleships. The major shipyards have also stepped up their vigilance, making it impossible for spies from various countries to find out the real situation. Once the war breaks out, the true strength of the German Navy will surely surprise other countries. This is the joint effort of everyone in the Imperial Navy. Of course, the support of the cabinet is also indispensable. After all, these big guys are very expensive. Qin Tian said with a smile. The Navy is a military service that burns money. A battleship costs tens of millions of marks. Without strong financial support, it simply cannot be played. Even Germany could barely hold on. Your Highness, I know the true situation of the Navy. If it weren't for Your Highness, the Imperial Navy would not be where it is today. Von Kidron-Wachter shook his head. Qin Tian smiled and didn't say much. Indeed, it was precisely because of his strong promotion that the German Navy was able to develop by leaps and bounds. Otherwise, the Imperial Navy will always be suppressed by the British. Based on the achievements of His Highness alone, I personally think that His Highness should be the heir of the empire. In the entire empire, no one is more suitable for this position than His Highness. Even the former Crown Prince William is far inferior to His Highness. Von Kidron-Wachter continued. Qin Tian couldn't help thinking about what von Kidron-Wachter meant. Could it be that the attitude of the civil servant faction will change because of this? If this is the case, this is undoubtedly a great thing for him. With the support of the civil servant faction, his position will be more stable. Although he thought so in his heart, Qin Tian still remained calm when he was not really sure. Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs, you are flattering me. Whether I can become the Crown Prince is determined by my father. I personally support any decision he makes, Qin Tian said. Chapter 147, Greeting or Demonstration. Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs, I have only one goal. Whether I'm the Crown Prince of the Empire or an ordinary prince, I hope to do my best, so that the Empire can defeat the enemy and win the war in future wars. The outcome of future wars is so important. It is related to the future of the German Empire and the Germanic nation. If we lose, the empire will cease to exist, and the Germanic nation will have no future. Qin Tian resolutely answered. Qin Tian's answer made von Kidron-Wachter a little moved. In many respects, Qin Tian's performance was much better than Crown Prince William's. Von Kidron-Wachter believed that Qin Tian was undoubtedly the best candidate for the Crown Prince of the German Empire. Even Prime Minister Bernhard von Gillow thinks so. This also caused the attitude of the civil servant faction in Germany to gradually change, from the previous neutrality to the current clear statement of support for Qin Tian. Of course, they did this to protect their interests. Otherwise, once Qin Tian inherits the throne, he will definitely attack the civil servant faction. They don't want to think of a solution when things come to an end. Investing in advance, although there will be some risks to some extent, will also result in more returns. His Royal Highness, His Excellency the Prime Minister and I, as well as other cabinet ministers, all recognize His Highness. From now on, we will fully support His Highness, von Kidron-Wachter said solemnly. After Qin Tian heard this sentence, he was very happy. With the support of the civil servant faction, his last shortcoming can be regarded as filled. His Crown Prince position will also be extremely stable. Is this also what the Prime Minister meant? Qin Tian asked. Yes, Your Highness. Your Excellency the Prime Minister also meant the same thing. Von Kidron-Wachter nodded. Actually, the reason why he showed his favor to Qin Tian was entirely on the intention of Prime Minister Bernhard von Gillow. Qin Tian nodded. Thank you for your trust and support in me. I promise that in the next few years, I will do my duty as a Crown Prince. Moreover, I will try my best to ensure that the Empire will survive in future wars. Victorious. Next, Qin Tian and von Kidron-Wachter exchanged views on the international situation. As a latecomer, Qin Tian naturally knew the direction of history. Many of his views, although very novel, are also recognized by von Kidron-Wachter. This also makes von Kidron-Wachter very grateful for today's choice. No matter what, it is better to support a truly talented person than to support a person who is ambitious, talented, and ignorant. In the afternoon of the next day, the battleship Nassau arrived at the mouth of the Thames. It's not far from London. According to the previous notice of the British government, after the warships of various countries arrive, they will berth at the Port of Grace. When Prince George ascends the throne, a grand ship review ceremony will be held at the estuary of the Thames River. Warships from various countries will also participate in this ship review ceremony. We will arrive in London soon. Next time, our warships will have to defeat the British if they want to arrive here, Qin Tian said with emotion. This place is not far from London, the capital of the United Kingdom, and has always been the focus of British defense. The battleship Nassau has encountered British Navy ships many times after entering the Thames estuary. However, they are basically destroyers or cruisers. Your Highness, we will definitely have the opportunity to come here again. A young general stood beside Qin Tian and said to him. He is the Chief of Staff of the High Seas Fleet, Rear Admiral Reinhard Scheer. Qin Tian nodded, convinced of this. Compared with another time and space, the current German Navy is not even a little bit stronger. In the Battle of Jutland in another time and space, the German Navy achieved tactical victories. Then, in this time and space, the German Navy will have a greater chance of winning. As long as the British Navy can be defeated in the naval battle, Germany will win this battle. Major Admiral Reinhard Scheer is also an admiral that Qin Tian values. In another time and space, he was the commander of the High Seas Fleet. In terms of personal ability, it is undoubtedly very good. The battleship Nassau continued to sail westward, but half an hour later, it was discovered that there were 2 more battleships of the British Navy ahead. Your Highness, the British have sent battleships to meet us, Major General Reinhard Scheer said. Welcome us? I don't think so. The British sent 2 battleships at once, and the element of the demonstration may be bigger, Qin Tian said with a smile. He didn't care about these little tricks of the British at all. The 2 battleships of the British look smaller than our battleship Nassau. Foreign Minister von Kidron-Wachter said. Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs, this is due to the distance between them. In fact, the 2 British battleships are not much smaller than our battleship Nassau. According to the data we have obtained, the displacement is only 500 less. It's just a ton. However, in terms of combat effectiveness, our battleship Nassau can definitely defeat the British battleships. Even if one is used to deal with 2 ships, the chances of winning are very high. Major General Reinhard Scheer, appearing very confident. Although the displacement of the Nassau-class battleship and the St. Vincent-class battleship are similar, the firepower and defense of both sides are still dominated by the Nassau-class. The defensive power of the Nassau-class battleship is stronger than that of the St. Vincent-class battleship that pursues speed too much. Similarly, the 305mm main gun with 50 times the caliber of the Nassau-class battleship is far superior to the British St. Vincent-class battleship in terms of armor-piercing ability. While Qin Tian and others were discussing about the British battleship, a young British admiral on the battleship St. Vincent of the British Navy was also observing the battleship Nassau with a telescope. He is Brigadier General David Beatty, captain of the battleship St. Vincent of the British Navy. The battleships built by the Germans are really ugly. The short and thick hull looks like a fat pig, not at all as beautiful as the battleships of the British Empire, just like a work of art. Brigadier General David Beatty put down the binoculars in his hand and said disdainfully, as a noble admiral of the Royal Navy, he has his own pride. Chapter 148, Overlord's Twilight. General, the German battleship doesn't look like a big deal. Compared with our St. Vincent-class battleship, it doesn't have any advantages, a British officer said beside Brigadier General David Beatty. Well, our St. Vincent-class battleships are definitely not inferior to those of the Germans. Brigadier General David Beatty was also very sure. As the sea supremacy, Commodore David Beatty has great confidence in Britain's shipbuilding capabilities. What's more, the era of dreadnoughts was also opened by them. Although the German Navy has been catching up, Brigadier General David Beatty still believes that the British Navy still has an absolute advantage so far. Actually, if you compare the number of capital ships between Britain and Germany, the British have no advantage now. Of the dreadnought ships currently in service, the British have 1 battleship dreadnought, 3 Bellerophon-class battleships, 3 St. Vincent-class battleships and 3 Invincible-class battlecruisers, and there are only 10 ships in total, that's all. The German Navy has 4 Nassau-class battleships, 5 Helgoland-class battleships, and 3 Blücher-class battlecruisers. In comparison, the German Navy even has a little advantage. Of course, if the capital ship under construction is counted, the German Navy may not have any advantage. In the British shipyard, the Neptune battleship is about to enter service, and the 2 Giant-class battleships are about to undergo sea trials. The construction of 4 Orion-class battleships has also started. In addition, 3 Indefatigable-class battlecruisers are about to enter service, and 2 Lion-class battlecruisers are also under construction. As for the German Navy, there are currently only 5 Caesar-class battleships and 3 Moltke-class battlecruisers under construction. Construction of the 5 King-class battleships and 3 Derfflinger-class battlecruisers has just started. If the shipbuilding plan of the British Navy in this time and space does not change significantly from another time and space Qin Tian is familiar with, then, in the past few years, the British will build warships like dumplings. For example, the King George V class battleship, the Iron Duke class battleship, the Queen Elizabeth class battleship and the Revenge class battleship, as well as the Tiger battlecruiser and a large number of advanced capital ships will start construction. The strength of the British Navy reached a peak. Of course, in the next few years, the German Navy will not be idle and will go all out to start building more capital ships. This will make the duel between the two sides more intense and full of uncertainty this time. General, the main turret of the Germans is covered by a gun jacket. I don't know what they are doing. A British officer said. Huh. The Germans are just playing tricks. Send a semaphore and welcome them. Brigadier General David Beatty ordered. Yes, General. The officer nodded. Soon, the battleship St. Vincent played a flag welcoming the German Crown Prince to visit the United Kingdom. The battleship Nassau also responded, thanking the British Navy for coming to welcome it. The Nassau battleship, led by two St. Vincent class battleships of the British Navy, sailed into the Thames River and finally entered the port of Grace. After entering the port, Qin Tian realized that he had not come early, and almost all the special envoys from other countries had arrived. Although the relationship between Britain and Germany are very tense now, in order to show respect for the German Crown Prince, Prince George's son, Prince Edward, rushed to Grace to welcome Qin Tian in person. Although Prince Edward is only 16 years old now. However, after Prince George ascends the throne to become the King of the United Kingdom, according to the right of succession to the throne, he will become the Queen of the United Kingdom. His Royal Highness, welcome to the UK. Prince Edward said. Thank you very much. The death of His Majesty Edward VII is a great loss to the whole world. He was such an outstanding king who was deeply loved by the people. Please condolences, Your Highness. Qin Tian looked at Prince Edward's expression with a slightly childish face. He said these words according to the script. In Qin Tian's eyes, although Prince Edward is still young, perhaps because of family inheritance, the fate of this prince is also strange. Like most British princes, Prince Edward also likes to mix with married women. In the future, he will even marry Mrs. Simpson despite the opposition of the ruling and opposition parties, so that he has to abdicate and be succeeded by his younger brother as King of England. Although, people who love beauty and don't love country make people talk about it. But in Qin Tian's view, this is simply a complete idiot. Qin Tian and Prince Edward exchanged pleasantries in Port Grace, and after talking without any nourishment, they drove to London. Your Highness, the ambassador to the United Kingdom reports that the special envoys or representatives of various countries have almost arrived, and we are the latest. Von Kidron Wachter said. Well, the British Empire is worthy of being the overlord for hundreds of years, and everyone in the world should give them face. Qin Tian's tone revealed a hint of envy. Indeed, no country has suppressed the whole world for hundreds of years like Britain. A small country occupies the most extensive colony in the world, and has reached the pinnacle of the world by continuously plundering the wealth of the colonies. Von Kidron? Vachite nodded. This topic seems to be a bit heavy, making him feel like a big rock is pressing on his heart. Although over the years, Germany has been ambitious to challenge the United Kingdom. However, the British Empire has stood at the pinnacle of the world for hundreds of years, and encountered countless challenges during this period, but eventually won. Can Germany win this time? Nobody knows. Moreover, once Germany fails, the consequences will be very serious. Qin Tian also sensed the change in von Kidron Wacht's mood, so he said, Your Excellency, Foreign Minister, although the British Empire is very powerful, it is not the time of Queen Elizabeth. At that time, the British Empire was in full swing, and there was no which country can compete with them. But now, everything is different. The British Empire now seems to have reached dusk. We will definitely be able to defeat them in the future, and replace them as the hegemon of the world. Von Kidron Wacht nodded, as if he was infected by Qin Tian's self-confidence. Chapter 149, Parade. After Qin Tian arrived in London, he stayed at the hotel prepared by the British side, took a short rest, and took the time to have a brief meeting with the German ambassador to the UK. From the ambassador to the UK, I learned about the current situation in the UK. That night, Prince George held a grand welcome dinner for Qin Tian's arrival at Buckingham Palace. British military and political officials, nobles and social celebrities, as well as those special envoys or representatives from various countries who arrived in the UK first, all attended the banquet. Welcome dinner. Prince George left after only half an hour at the dinner, because he had to prepare for the funeral of Edward VII and his rank ceremony. Prince Edward accompanied the guests who came from afar on his behalf. The young Prince Edward obviously couldn't attract everyone's attention. In contrast, Qin Tian really became the focus of the dinner. As the Crown Prince of the German Empire, Qin Tian is not very old, only 22 years old. In the eyes of everyone, he is quite already young. What's more, Qin Tian is also in control of wealth that can rival a country, which makes him even more eye-catching. I don't know how many noble wives and young ladies want to climb into his bed, even if it's just for one night. They can only wait for it. However, among these noble ladies and young ladies, although there are many beauties, but Qin Tian is a clean freak. Unlike the princes of the British royal family, he doesn't like buses. In his eyes, there is only Princess Gondland. In comparison, those other people are just vulgar fans. After another noble ladies and young ladies offered to invite Qin Tian to dance and were rejected, no one continued to try. After all, they are people with status, so naturally they don't want to be slapped in the face again and again. His Highness Oscar, good evening. I really envy His Highness, who has become the focus of the entire dinner. But I have heard complaints from those ladies that His Highness is a man who doesn't understand style. A man with a beautiful horoscope whose middle-aged man came over with a wine glass. His Excellency, good evening. Qin Tian knew this person. He was Germany's most loyal ally, the Crown Prince of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Archduke Ferdinand. He was also an extremely tragic figure. A few years later, this Crown Prince with a heart higher than the sky will become the fuse of a world war. And his ambition will disappear because of his death. The powerful Austro-Hungarian Empire will disintegrate because of this war. Of course, Qin Tian knew all this, but he would not remind Archduke Ferdinand. Although Germany and the Austro-Hungarian Empire are close allies, this is because both sides are under huge external pressure, which makes them have to hold together for warmth. If the outcome of the war is rewritten, and Germany wins the war, will the future Germany and the Austro-Hungarian Empire still be close allies? The continent of Europe is too small for two large countries. What's more, Archduke Ferdinand is also an ambitious person. Qin Tian didn't want Germany to have another big country with great ambitions after defeating Britain and France. In this case, after winning the World War, Germany has to deal with an ambitious ally. In contrast, Qin Tian thinks that Archduke Ferdinand should die. Your Highness, look over there. The Russian foreign minister and the French foreign minister have joined together. The Italians are also with them. This makes me wonder what the Italians stand for. Archduke Ferdinand said. Qin Tian couldn't help but frowned. The Italians were double-faced, and he knew it very well. Even on this occasion, the fact that the Italian foreign minister got together with the French foreign minister and the Russian foreign minister did not mean anything. However, this is enough to cause people to be wary. Your Excellency, you are too sensitive. Perhaps, they are just ordinary chats. Archduke Ferdinand smiled, and did not continue this topic. After chatting for a few words, Archduke Ferdinand left with a glass of wine. There is a full 25 years difference in age between him and Qin Tian, and it is difficult for the two of them to have a common language. Qin Tian left before the dinner was over, and von Kidron-Wasch took advantage of this time to learn about the situation. In the next few days, Qin Tian mainly visited the scenic spots around London. On May 20th, the funeral of Edward VII was held. The people of London cried together. It can be seen that the British royal family in this era has undoubtedly had a great influence on the British people. Are indeed many people who love the royal family. Far from being like 100 years later, many British people have already regarded the royal family as parasites. The people who saw Edward VII off almost included all the major powers in the world, including the Crown Prince of Germany, the Crown Prince of Austria-Hungary, the Prince of Italy, the Prince of Sweden, the Dutch Special Envoy, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of France, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, the Secretary of State of the United States, and the Foreign Affairs Office of Japan Minister and so on. If Britain was not the hegemon of the world, I'm afraid that so many people would not have paid attention to the death of Edward VII. But, because of Britain's hegemony, everything is different. Qin Tian sighed in his heart. This also strengthened his determination, and he wanted Germany to take advantage of this war to overthrow Britain and replace it as the world's hegemon. Prince George's coronation ceremony, on the third day after Edward VII's funeral, witnessed by British cabinet ministers, celebrities, representatives of various countries and envoys stationed in the UK. The Archbishop of the British Diocese put on the crown symbolizing the British throne for Prince George. Prince George, officially King George V. The next day, everyone went to Portsmouth Naval Port to attend the Grand Ship Review held by the British Navy to celebrate George V's accession to the throne. Warships from various countries also arrived at Portsmouth Naval Port from Grace. Outside the naval port of Portsmouth, hundreds of warships of the British Navy passed in front of the cruise ship where King George V and others were located. These among warships, the most cutting-edge dreadnoughts of the British Navy were included: Street Vincent class battleship, Bellerophon class battleship, Invincible class battlecruiser dreadnought battleship. One is not bad. In addition, there are more than 30 pre-dreadnought ships. Although, after the advent of dreadnoughts, the combat effectiveness of these former dreadnoughts has been greatly questioned. However, the dozens of former dreadnoughts of the British Navy still have considerable combat power. The ship parade is more shocking than the military parade. In this era, only the Royal Navy of the British Empire can hold such a shocking ship review ceremony. Of course, the reason why the British held the ship review ceremony was to celebrate the enthronement of George V on the one hand, but on the other hand, it might not be, to deter other countries. For example, ambitious Germany. Chapter 150, Churchill's warning. On the second day after the ship review ended, Qin Tian and von Kidron-Wacht boarded the battleship Nassau and set off to return to Germany. Prince Edward personally rushed to the pier to see them off, demonstrating the friendship between Britain and Germany. The British Navy's ship review style is undoubtedly shocking. The whole world was shocked by it, and was shocked by the powerful strength shown by the Royal Navy. Some countries even firmly believe that the British Empire is the most powerful country on this planet. Of course, some countries have decided to increase their investment in the Navy because of this. For example, the Americans on the other side of the ocean have enough money to carry out an arms race. Small countries in the East have also strengthened their belief in developing their navy. Have many similarities with the United Kingdom. Since the British can become the world's hegemon in one fell swoop, they believe that they may also become the next British Empire. As for Qin Tian, he saw the British Empire's external strength and internal strength. In the past, the British Empire dominated the world, and some people refused to accept it, so they just sent a powerful navy to teach them a lesson. But now, the wolves are looking around, and Britain, which has begun to decline, can only use the ship parade to show off its force to frighten other countries, thereby consolidating its position. What's more, Germany has already determined the goal of overthrowing Britain and replacing it, so how can it be frightened by the British showing off their force? Except for the cutting-edge dreadnoughts, the rest of the warships that the British participated in the review were old pre-dreadnoughts. For Germany, this is not a threat at all. As long as the German Navy defeats Britain in terms of dreadnoughts, the remaining former dreadnoughts of the British Navy will be completely at their disposal. After the representatives and envoys of various countries left the UK, British society gradually returned to calm. Although, the king has changed, but it has no impact on the political situation in the UK. Under the constitutional monarchy, the power of the king has been greatly compressed, and there is not much real power at all. The power of the country is almost always in the hands of the cabinet headed by the Prime Minister. British Prime Minister Herbert Henry Asquith held a cabinet meeting. In the previous cabinet, he was Chancellor of the Exchequer. After the term of the previous Prime Minister expired, he successfully became the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. It's just that Prime Minister Asquith doesn't think the position of Prime Minister is a good job. When other people were Prime Ministers, Britain could be said to be peaceful and coercive all over the world. However, while he is Prime Minister, the situation is now becoming increasingly tense. The Germans are becoming more and more aggressive at sea, wanting to challenge the British maritime supremacy. The Americans on the other side of the ocean, relying on their industrial output value to rank first in the world, are also unwilling to be just an industrial power, not a world-class military power. Although he has won over France and Russia, Prime Minister Asquith still has no certainty of winning the future war. Then King George V of England ascended the throne and held a grand ship review ceremony to deter other countries, which was the decision of the cabinet. Gentlemen, how is the effect of our ship review this time? Prime Minister Asquith asked excitedly. Your Excellency, our ship review is very effective. At least, many countries are shocked by the Royal Navy. Secretary of the Navy McKenna smiled. Very good, very good. This result is what I want. Let the whole world know that the Royal Navy of the British Empire is still the most powerful navy in the world. Any attempt to provoke the British Empire will be punished by the powerful Royal Navy. It was smashed. Prime Minister Asquith said excitedly. Your Excellency the Prime Minister, our French allies and Russian allies are envious of the strength of the Royal Navy. They also want to build a powerful navy. Foreign Secretary Sir Edward Grey said. No. The task of the French and Russians is to develop the army and contain the Germans on land. The task of developing the navy and defeating the German navy will be undertaken by the Royal Navy. I believe that the Royal Navy will be very good complete this task. Prime Minister Asquith said with a smile. The strength of the Royal Navy allowed him to find confidence, tasking that the hegemony of the British Empire was still impregnable. That's right, what Your Excellency the Prime Minister said is right. The powerful Royal Navy can definitely beat the **** out of the Germans. Just like the Spaniards, Dutch and French back then, they were defeated by us time and time again. No one can wrest sea power from the hands of the British Empire. Colonial Secretary Lewis Vernon Harcourt said. The reason why Britain was able to seize so many colonies around the world is inseparable from the strength of the Royal Navy. Without a powerful navy, those British colonies might have been seized by others long ago. All the ministers almost laughed. Everyone is very optimistic about the future situation, thinking that Britain will definitely be able to defeat Germany and other enemies and defend their world hegemony. However, among the many cabinet ministers, one person did not have a smile on his face, and his mind was not dazzled by the success of the ship review this time. This man is Churchill. Although he is now the Minister of the Interior in the cabinet, he also served as the Secretary of the Navy before becoming the Secretary of the Interior. I have a very good understanding of the situation of the Navy, Your Excellency Prime Minister. Gentlemen, everyone seems to be too optimistic about the current situation. Maybe my words are not very pleasant. However, the fact is that, if we blindly arrogant, the British Empire may usher in a fiasco in the future that will cause us to lose world hegemony, lost overseas colonies. Will the British Empire continue to be strong? I'm afraid that it will directly become a second-rate country from the world hegemony. Therefore, we cannot continue to be blindly optimistic now. We must be vigilant and try our best to develop our military power. Only in this way may we be able to defend the supremacy of the British Empire. Churchill said with a serious face. Indeed, Churchill's words were not very pleasant to the ears of other ministers, and many people's faces became unsightly. They even want to speak out if they can. Prime Minister Asquith didn't care about Churchill's words. He already valued Churchill very much, otherwise he would not have entrusted him with important tasks. If Churchill had unique insights, he was also willing to adopt them. Your Excellency Churchill, do you have any suggestions? Prime Minister Asquith asked. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.